Good morning. I want to welcome everybody to the June 13th meeting of the Board of Commissioners, and welcome to the People's House. And we have a lot of things going on, but I'm just really gratified to see so many people here today. Just reflects that. I hope that you have the confidence in the board that you know that when you come here, you're going to be heard, and we have a lot of great things going to happen today. So with that, let's start on the right foot. I'd like to have Captain Chris Powell from Salvation come up. Unfortunately, Captain Powell is leaving us this Sunday after many years of service here. And Chris, we wish you Godspeed on your assignment in Brunswick, Georgia.
Thanks, sir.
And then Sergeant Chris Worth will lead us from the Sheriff's Department, lead us from the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'll all please stand.
You bow your heads with me this morning. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning. We thank you for another beautiful day, Father. We thank you for a forum where we can come together as one and talk about the things that are going on in our community. We thank you for the commissioners who are being led and guided to take care of things in this community as you would lead them. Father, we thank you for all of those that come in here and into this house to be a part of this. And Father, most of all, we thank you for your Son who came and died on a cross. And we ask all of this in his precious name. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chris. All right, just a couple of admin notes here before we get started. We're going to move tab. Millie, where's my script? We're going to move tab 9 to right after the consent agenda. There's just a lot of moving parts going on today, and after the meeting yesterday, we just wanted to move that up. So for those that are watching from home, those that are here today, and then we'll watch later on, we're going to be moving tab 9 up to tabs after the consent agenda. And tab 9 involves the appointment, the vote on the appointment of the new police chief, and also the vote on the payment for projects associated with the development agreement and SunTrust Park. So with that, we have another great presentations this morning, and I'd like to have Commissioner Weatherford start with this first one.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to offer a proclamation this morning, and this is for the North Georgia Cobb Elder Abuse Task Force. I'd like to have Jason Marbutt with the senior assistant DA for the chair of the task force, Christine Roseman, who's a task force member and a citizen, Joe Gavalis is here today, okay. And Jessica Gill, who is our senior services director, come forward. And Spencer Miller. Oh, I'm sorry. The board would like to present a proclamation, and I want to read that to you. Our older adults are valued members of society, and I like to think that. They deserve to live safely with dignity and independently as possible. Our seniors also deserve the support systems they need to enjoy life, and elderly abuse is the most often defined as an act that harms a senior or developmentally disabled adult, or jeopardize his or her health or welfare. It is any knowing, intentional, or negligent act by a caregiver or other persons that cause harm or serious risk of harm to a vulnerable adult. And whereas elderly abuse may be physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, exploitation, emotional abuse, abandonment, or self-neglect, some warning signs are bruises, broken bones and burns, unexplained withdrawal from normal activities, and an unusual depression and anxiety. Sudden changes in financial situations, bed sores, poor hygiene, and unusual weight loss. And fear of family members, friends, or caregivers. And it's important to be alert because elders often suffer in silence. Noticeably, changes in a senior's personality, appearance, or behavior should be questioned to find out what is happening. So therefore, we as the Cobb County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim June 15, 2017 is Elder Abuse Awareness Day in Cobb County. Encourage everyone to commit to building a safer community for our older and developmentally disabled residents. Presented this 13th day of June, 2017. There you go. Let's give them a round for what they do for our community. I'd like to say a few words.
Always love when they hand me the mic and I'm not sure what there is to say.
I never know either, so.
You never know either. So we thank you to the board for recognizing this. This is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and this is an important issue. We on the Cobb Elder Abuse Task Force have been working diligently for a number of years to try and raise awareness. We've put together a PSA, which will hopefully start airing on TV 23 and maybe some of the other local stations. We're working for some education, but we again thank you for your recognition.
Sure, thank you. Jessica, would you like?
I just want to thank the board and chairman and everyone for allowing us to have this today. The actual day is June 15th, but we couldn't fit the board meeting into June 15th, so we're doing it today. And again, financial fraud is probably the most prevalent, and if you're going to think about it, please recognize that that could happen to you.
Well, we and the Board of Commissioners appreciate what you do in making us aware of this important situation that we have in our county and other parts of the country. So thanks for your help, thanks for your volunteering, and we hope that all of us now are a little bit more aware of this situation. So thanks a lot. Here you go. Thank you.
Commissioner Burrow now has a presentation. Actually, has the next two presentations.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. If I could ask Gina Cooper to come up. Most of y'all probably remember last year, I started a program called Superior Pets for Patriotic Vets. And Superior Plumbing was our sponsor and donated $5,000 to give free adoptions for our veterans for companion pets from the Cobb County Animal Shelter. So far we have 7 pets adopted from veterans in the community, and we have enough money through Superior Plumbing to adopt out 50 pets. So we're on our way, and thanks to the generosity of Zaxby's locally, here, Gina is going to tell you give you some background. And could I have Director Heaton and Captain Owens come up too? Captain Owens is our director of the animal shelter, and he does a great job over there and taking care of all our dogs and cats. And you all know our director of public safety, Sam Heaton. But Zaxby's wanted to help out with this program too for their support for our veterans. So they did a day of proceeds, 15% of the proceeds, all day on May 18th at their Sandy Plains location in District 3 to donate to this program. And they raised $500. So with that money, they're donating to the animal shelter, and the shelter will buy supplies for the veterans when they adopt the pets to give them a gift bag or gift card or whatever they can. So Gina Cooper is here representing Zaxby's, which is a great community partner with us on a lot of different things, but especially this program. So would you like to say a few words?
Sure. This is the part that I love about my job. I am affiliated with Dustin Mullis's Zaxby's. We have about 5 in Cobb County. And I was searching for a feel-good moment for myself, believe it or not. I feel like our vets need to be rewarded for the services that they do for us. And who doesn't want to save animals out of an animal shelter? And to partner these two things together, I couldn't find the right organization to try to give. I kept looking and kept looking. And then I happened to talk about it with Joanne and was just amazed when she told me about this program. I was like, we have to do something. Please let us be involved. And at that point, we decided to do an all-day fundraiser, and it was amazing. It just makes me feel so good. So I'm very happy to help out. Dustin couldn't be here today, so I'm here representing, so I get the feel-good moment. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for letting us help you guys out any way we can. So thank you.
We appreciate your support and your generosity, and I think you have a check for these guys.
Thank you. It's not big. It's not a big check, but you know.
Well, every little bit helps. And also, just so y'all know, our public safety director is a veteran, and our Captain Owens is a active duty reserve. So, Army and Navy.
Although Chief, not sure about that.
So, thank you for your support, and we look forward to more programs and partnerships.
Absolutely.
Okay, now we need to get.
And now we have the whole left side of the audience come up, the Pope High School baseball team, and your supporters, come on up.
Congratulations. Okay, I have the honor today of recognizing the state champions, 6A, Class 6A baseball champs for the state Pope High School Greyhounds. Woohoo! And not only did they win the state championship, they also won the Director's Cup, and their athletic director, Josh Matthews, is the AD of the year. Let's have a round of applause. So, I have way too many certificates to read out, but I will read out one. We have certificates of appreciation for the coaches, the managers, and the team. So, is Jackson Brown here? No. He's a singer. Okay. Cobb County Board of Commissioners Certificate of Recognition presented to Jackson Brown, Pope High School. The Cobb County Board of Commissioners congratulates you and the Pope High School boys baseball team on winning the GHSA Class 6A baseball crown. With an overall record of 34-6, the Pope Greyhound baseball team shows tremendous accomplishment and exemplifies hard work. The Pope Greyhound baseball team also received the title of 6A champions. We are proud of your commitment to excellence and wish you the best as you continue your academic and athletic career. This is the 13th day of June. So, as I mentioned, not only did they win the state championship and the Director's Cup, but their athletic director is the athletic director of the year for the state. A good friend, Cheryl Hungerford, who retired but is now interim principal at Pope, asked me about could they be recognized at a Braves game. So with a little email, a few emails and phone calls, June 23rd, the Pope High School baseball team behind me here will be recognized at the Braves game. It's a Friday night, and so come out and support your Pope Greyhounds if you're able to on Friday the 23rd. So that's going to be exciting. So if I don't get there, I'll be watching at home. So I'd like for y'all to I'll introduce yourself and I guess tell us what year you are, or if you graduated, where you're going to school. And I hope that one day soon we'll see you on the Braves field.
My name's Reed Robertson, and I'm going to be a sophomore next year.
My name is Max Pralgo, and I'm going to be a junior. My name is Parker Ward. I just graduated. I'm going to Georgia Highlands.
My name's Will Lantis. I'm going to be a junior next year.
My name's Chase Smith. I just graduated and I'll be going to University of Pittsburgh.
My name's Michael Wynn and I'll be going to Wofford College.
I'm Scott Lasser and I'm going to be a senior next year.
I'm Caden Smith and I'll be a junior next year.
I'm Harris East and I'll be a senior next year.
I'm Jordan Butler, and I'll be a senior next year.
I'm Tanner Hike. I'm going to be going to Clemson next year.
I'm Buddy Floyd, and I'll be a junior next year.
My name's Jared Miller. I just graduated, and I'm going to the University of Notre Dame.
My name's Jake Pralgo, and I'm going to Georgia College and State University.
Great. Congratulations. Y'all want to say a few words? Coach Rowland, would you like to say a few words?
I just want to thank the board for this recognition. It's quite an honor. Very proud of these guys. One of the rankings, and they're starting to come in. We just found one this morning that had these guys ranked number 5 in the nation this year. So quite an honor. Very proud of these guys. But again, just like to thank the board and Ms. Burrell for all the recognition and the help setting up for the Friday night thing at the Braves game. Is going to be pretty special as well. So thanks for all you do.
I'd like to say thank you also to Ms. Burrell for these recognitions. I will say it was a fun year at Pope. We went into the state baseball championship down 4.5 points in the Directors' Cup. So the whole season culminated with a state championship, and it also propelled us to the overall Directors' Cup, which awards success in the state playoffs. So it went way beyond the baseball team all the way back to the fall. So really fun year, and we appreciate the recognition here. Thank you.
Sorry, I have to tell you, it was one of my greatest joys, my professional career, having the opportunity to serve as interim principal at Pope High School with this tremendous honor. These guys worked so hard, and I have to point out that this coaching staff not only develops strong athletic success, but they develop men. So I'm very proud of this coaching team and what they've done with these students. They've accomplished a lot. Thank you, Burrell. Commissioner Burrell, for this recognition, and also Mike Plant for the Braves night. We look forward to that.
Hi, I'm Tom Flugum. I'm one of the assistant principals, and I'm going to say a couple things because they're too shy to say it. But Coach Rowland, since 2009, we've won 3 state championships and played for another. He's the only coach in Cobb County that's got 3 baseball state championships. Coach Matthews, under his leadership, this is our 2nd Directors' Cup since 2014. We're the only Cobb County school that's won that award more than once. So I would like to say that for them. Also, on a little side note, 20 years ago, I worked with Mike Register back here at Cobb County Police. I saw a lot of old friends that I didn't know were going to be here this morning, so that's been a real reward, and thank you to the board. Thank you, Ms. Burrell.
Thanks. Now let's get a picture. I love these odds. Come on, Cheryl. Come on, guys. I'm going to get right in the middle. Except I don't want to be next to my purpose insurance. I'm sorry. Nobody's going to Carolina. Thank you. Congratulations. Good job.
Okay, and now we have Commissioner Cupid. Gentlemen going to Notre Dame could stay. I want all those guys in the blue uniforms back there, stop that guy getting out going to Notre Dame, all right? Thanks, guys, for coming this morning. Congratulations again.
For those of you standing in the back, there are some seats that are now available up here if you'd like to have a seat. Yes, this morning I have the opportunity to recognize Puckett EMS and would ask for any representation from the organization to please join me up front. This morning, the Board of Commissioners has the honor of recognizing Puckett EMS's shockingly simple program. Whereas Puckett EMS responds to more than 56,000 calls a year, including 911 emergencies and non-emergencies, it is one of only 5 ambulance companies in Metro Atlanta to have earned the gold accreditation from the International Commission on Accreditation of Ambulance Services. Since 2010, Puckett EMS has been honored with 15 local and county awards, 14 from Region 3, 5 State of Georgia awards, and 4 national awards. These honors include excellence in service, trauma, patient care, clinical expertise, community engagement and investment, top service of the year, and best emergency transport company. There's not an award that they have not received. Whereas Shockingly Simple is a unique Puckett EMS awareness campaign designed to equip the public with the knowledge and understanding needed during a cardiac emergency. Since 2009, staff has trained more than 2,500 people in CPR AED and have placed more than 75 AEDs in the communities they serve, impacting more than 113,600 people. And whereas Puckett EMS has donated many AEDs to local businesses, schools, senior centers, and parks, the program's biggest advocate, Jim McMitchin, serves on the Wellstar Douglas Hospital Board, leads many senior services, networking associations, and gives more than 27 school health and career fair presentations every year. Whereas almost 750,000 Americans suffer a heart attack each year, and research shows that rapid defibrillation is the single most important factor affecting survival from sudden cardiac arrest in adults. For every minute a patient is in arrest, his or her chance of survival decreases by 10%. When sudden cardiac arrest victims in ventricular fibrillation receive defibrillation within the first minute or two after collapse, more than 90% survive to be discharged from the hospital. And whereas in 2013, Governor Nathan Deal signed a bill requiring CPR and AED instruction in Georgia high schools, a Puckett EMS paramedic, Dennis Kelly, was instrumental in this initiative by lobbying state legislators and organizing EMTs and paramedics to voluntarily teach the classes at local high schools. Now, therefore, we, the Cobb County Board of Commissioners, do hereby honor Puckett EMS for its invaluable work to both educate and equip our community with the information and skills needed in life-threatening cardiac emergencies. The Shockingly Simple campaign is a worthy endeavor that will certainly help save lives. Thank you, this 13th day of June 2017. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that this is a passion of ours to be able to place AEDs in the community. I know they cost a lot. We have purchasing power that can get it at half the cost, and we've had a lot of organizations step forward like Kiwanis and Lions Club to help purchase those to go into community places, and then we teach the free CPR. So if your organization is interested, we'd love to pair up with you. Cobb County has benefited from over 40 of these AEDs here in Cobb County, and not only churches and parks, schools, that kind of thing. So I'd encourage you to be a part of that. Thank you, and we appreciate this.
Thank you, Shane.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner and Commissioners, for another outstanding group of individuals from Cobb County who are doing to making this an even better place to live. Thank you very much for that time this morning. All right, so let's go on to tab number 3, where we're going to have a public hearing. And this public hearing is to approve the Chattahoochee Corridor Plan Certificate of Compliance for a warehouse at 5424 South Cobb Drive. So that, just want to let everybody know that during this public hearing, they ask you to come up, please identify yourself, tell us, where you live, street or Cobb County, just, we need to write letters, thank you for coming this morning. And then you have 3 minutes to talk. So, and I'm gonna pretty much probably have to enforce the 3 minutes today. We have a lot of things going on today, and I'd like to ask you to respect that 3-minute time limit this morning. So with that, Dana?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dana Johnson, Cobb County Community Development. Here to request opening a public hearing and the board to consider a Chattahoochee Corridor Plan Certificate for 5424 South Cobb Drive, which is a 24,700 square foot addition to an office warehouse building on South Cobb Drive. As a bit of background, the Chattahoochee Corridor Plan was adopted by the Georgia General Assembly in 1973. It requires that all land disturbance activity within a certain distance of the Chattahoochee River go through a process where the Atlantic Regional Commission reviews these for compliance and then issues that it is in compliance. Once that compliance has been certified by ARC, then it comes back for the Board of Commissioners to make final determinations on that particular item. This is a property, again, at 5424 South Cobb Drive. You can see kind of where it is, kind of just south of where Riverview Road goes into South Cobb Drive, just north of the Chattahoochee River. It meets the 200-foot requirement, which means that it is here for consideration. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would ask you to please open the public hearing on this item, and then I'll be happy to address any questions from the board.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I open the public hearing for this approval of a warehouse at 5424 South Cobb Drive. Does anyone like to speak to this issue? Would anybody like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I now declare this public hearing at a close. We need to, I'm sorry, Commissioner Cupid.
Okay, thank you. We had some discussion at our agenda session regarding different projects that come for consideration for the Chattahoochee Corridor Plan. And I learned that when there are projects that do not fit within the requirements or scope of this plan, they simply won't come before the Board of Commissioners. And this is why we typically approve all of the plans that come before us, not because there is no discretion on the projects, just because they would not even reach the Board of Commissioners for consideration. So with that, I am pleased to move that the board approve construction of the warehouse building at 5424 South Cobb Drive.
Second. In a second, any discussion? Call the question. It passes 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dana. All right, now we're going to tab 4. Ms. Dance, do we have speakers today?
Yes, you have 4 speakers signed up, the first of which is Craig Kutsillis. If you please come forward.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Craig Kutsillis. I'm a writer. I've come here to talk about the Braves situation. And I'd like to start at the beginning. Back when the agreement was signed, it was a 7 o'clock meeting. 2 things we know happened during that day. Shortly after lunch, these seats began to fill up with people in blue shirts, real estate agents, people in plumbing, people in alarms, the development community, which presented people that didn't get their income directly from the Braves deal, from taking time off work to get in here. By the time they got in here, there were no speaking slots available. Here is local attorney Mr. Belfry, local legend, got kicked out of the meeting trying to get at least 1 or 2 voices in opposition. The second thing that happened that day, about right after lunch, the development agreement was modified. And it was modified in such a manner that very few people saw it happen, and here's how. If you were to do a search on Braves development agreement, you're going to get that first page up there. Not the agreement itself, but that first page up there. Now, that modification that came in the day of the meeting didn't get up there. In fact, it didn't get up there for a number of years. It didn't get up there until I did an open records request and asked the county to put the correct document up there. Why does that matter? Here's why it matters. That sentence wasn't in the document. Nobody saw that sentence. That sentence is a crucial sentence because it creates a rule. For that rule, there should have been properties associated with it that would have been deducted from the $14 million. One of them would have been Interstate North Parkway. It's the main entrance. It was moved. The other one, we were told that Windy Hill and Terrell Mill were all about access to the Braves. That should have been in there. Why is that important? Here's why. You've committed a ton of money already. We found, and thanks to your brilliant detective work at that workstation, we found that we're $8 million short in the primary role of government, which is fixing roads and potholes. You've made the commitment to honor the rest of the parks bond. You've made the commitment, 2-3 years ago, for employee raises, including our police. You put money aside for that. We recently learned that the Braves Stadium is could be the only stadium on the planet in which the team doesn't pay for overtime. We got stuck for that. We're paying for empty buses in Cumberland, a present to Cumberland. We were hoodwinked on the Braves Bridge. We were told by Kimley Horn 38% of the traffic will be parked south of 285, necessitating the bridge. There's no parking. It's at will. So, did you see that clause in that agreement? And why didn't Interstate North Parkway, Windy Hill, and Terrell Mill apply?
I'll let you eat up your time, Craig.
I could restate that. I have 5 minutes.
No, the point.
I'd like to restate the question, if I may.
Well, look, I just want, as a matter of respect to you,
Thank you for that.
is that there were a number of projects that were considered. That was not on the list of the ones that we approved.
Can we go back to please, the sentence? There's a rule. Shall be considered to be portion of the transportation. There should have been no negotiation.
Well, as you know, Craig, what's not on here is that you and Ms. Dance have had a number of exchanges about this, and she's answered you on that question.
No, the answer that I got from Ms. Dance was the fact that the change was made the day of the meeting.
The question was
That's
asked.
the clarification I got from Ms. Dance. And thank you for this colloquy. I do appreciate it.
That's fine. And all I can say is that you asked the question and it was answered.
No,
You're not satisfied with the answer. I appreciate that.
With all due deference, sir, the question has not been answered.
In your opinion.
Well, then please answer the question. The question
It has
would be,
been answered. It has been answered. Mr.
A, the
Casillas.
question is, did you see that? Only you can answer that. Ms. Dance can't. Secondly, why don't these streets apply? That's not been answered either.
Like I said, there were a number of projects that were considered. That didn't make the list.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Okay.
The next speaker is David Birkenbein, if you come forward.
Morning, David.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager. David Birkenbein. Medical burn ban. Last time we talked about prohibitions, bans, and restrictions. When you come up on the site, they have a quick reference guide. It was kind of small print last time, so they've just on their own took the medical burn ban and call it to restricted burn areas. So that's one problem I have. It's not a restricted burn area, it's a burn ban. You go to the medical burn ban site, it's a medical burn ban. You go to the medical burn ban map, it's a medical burn ban. It's not a restricted area. The second thing I have trouble with on this quick reference, even though if you follow guidelines for burning, you may, with permission by the fire marshal or chief, for their representatives have to put the fire out if it is affecting the people with a medical condition. Outdoor burning is outdoor burning, and it's these fire pits, these pans, and whatever you're going to have out here burning still creates the smoke. I sent Chairman Boyce a deal on COPD. I don't know if he got it or not or read it, but it's just simple. If you don't breathe, you don't get oxygen. You don't get oxygen, your CO2 builds up. It's like everybody says, it's a delicate balance. And I didn't know how delicate it was until I went through the system. But we just shrugged it off as, well, you know, they smoked when they was younger. Well, fine, I did too. I ain't got it. I drank when I was younger too. I don't have liver problems or any other problem. I'm probably pretty healthy. But, you know, you can't say that, well, and even on the application it says, did you smoke? What difference does it make? One woman I talked to, she's in the Mapleton Coalition. I had her go with this medical burn ban with me. And she said, you know what's missing? I said, no, what? The human element. We are so tied up on words that we have forgot the human element. There's a human element in this situation. But going back to words, we can go back to the exceptions for medical burn, the exceptions for burning restrictions, covers your barbecues, covers all your normal stuff, until 2006 when somebody had nerve enough to stand up for the people with medical conditions and breathing problems that they put out a program for medical burn ban. And everybody went, oh, we can't have this, you know. Well, that was 2006. Now it's 2017. And we need to progress on. But if you take where the fire chief shall can be construed as mandatory. It's mandatory that he authorizes the ban on outdoor burning. It doesn't say may. May comes down in the fire chief may issue an open burn permit when special circumstances warrant. And then they list some of the special circumstances. Well, even though you want these fire pits and these chimneys, and it's all the other stuff that people want to burn and create smoke for people that are in a medical burn ban, then give them a permit. You know, let's go back to 2006. We want to grandfather stuff in. Well, let's go back to 2006. Any other pit or any other outdoor burning in a medical burn ban ought to be enforced. It says in many places here that it can be enforced. They shall be put out. If it don't, you can have outdoor burning if it don't affect somebody's health adversely, if they don't have a medical condition. And when the people that have a medical condition call, then it's a judgment call. Then it's interpretation. Then it's this, then it's that. It's always something else except the medical burn ban. Thank you.
David?
The next speaker is Ben Williams. If you come forward, please.
Morning, Ben. How are you
Good morning,
doing?
Mr. Chairman.
Good to have you.
Commissioners, good morning to you. Two things. In the flow of what many of us consider to be some changes here in Cobb County, the board is scheduled to at least make a statement regarding the finalists for the position of police chief. You know, I'm pleased to report that a number of us did have an opportunity yesterday to spend about 2.5 hours with the finalists. And I think that it's fair to say that we left that setting with a sense that the finalists that will be considered today is the right person for this job at this time. I heard a while back that zoning decisions are really important because it's not for this year or next year, but it has a generational effect. I think that came from one of you up there. And I believe that was you, Commissioner Cupid. Okay? I transfer that to say that my hope is that the selection of the appointment of the police chief will have a similar effect. See, I do not expect to be here next year or 2 years from now, and we are talking about hiring another police chief. Okay? So it's very important that selection is there. So we were extremely pleased, and I think some of us said, I said to the candidate that he deserves every opportunity to be successful. Every opportunity to be successful. And those of us assembled yesterday, and some who couldn't make it, I believe are there to work with him to help ensure that this finalist will be successful. The board spent $90,000 plus to get a report from an external agency who, in fact, had some reputation of knowing police work. And they came out with a report. It wasn't a perfect report, but it was a report that I think can provide a foundation for those of us who are interested in working with law enforcement to use as a reference and help to shape the plan going forward. And we're eager to do that. Specifically, one of the 34 recommendations, and incidentally, there are a number of us who read the 267 pages, spent time doing that, and also trying to discern from that meaning, okay? But one of them that came out of President Obama's 21st Century Policing Report had to do with transparency, trust, intimacy, and also a new fancy word called co-production, which simply means working together to get stuff done. So I want to say to the board that that investment in that report, I think, will prove to be valuable beyond the moment, that there are a number of us who are ready and are prepared to stand with the candidate that you will, in fact, make a statement on later on in this agenda. So I'm very optimistic as we move forward to really look at seriously, and that's what I left with, that this guy is serious. Seriously look at matters of concern that have to do with law enforcement and community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. We always appreciate your eloquence.
The last speaker is Jonathan Evans. If you'd come forward, please.
Jonathan Edwards?
Evans.
Evans, I'm sorry. Jonathan Evans? Okay, well, maybe. So let's, one last call for Jonathan Evans.
Dr. Williams' eloquence may have intimidated him.
Oh, okay. I hope not. All right, well, let's go. Let's move on then. Thank you for all the comments this morning. Going to move on to tab number 5, which is the consent agenda. And I'd like to, first of all, last night I sent an email to all the commissioners about items number 27 and 28, and working through Mr. Hosack. So I'm about to make a motion to revise the consent agenda by deleting items number 27 and 28 from the consent agenda this morning. Commissioner Cupid.
Yes, I saw some emails back and forth,
Right.
and I thought that the matter behind those items was clarified.
Actually, Commissioner, there were some additional questions. I think that in speaking with the administrator, Ms. Murphy, there are some questions that we'll be able to provide answers to the board on between now and the next meeting on the 27th. The questions that were posed yesterday, and that I believe you're referencing as far as the emails go, were about a statement being added that if the grant funding were to go away, that the position would in turn go away as well. Later yesterday evening, there were some concerns about a county match requirement and what particular fund that would come from. We have some ideas on how to address that, but I had requested, with the chairman's permission and with Ms. Murphy's permission, an additional week and a half to work those out for the board's consideration, ma'am.
And for those that sort of bring you up to speed here, there are a number of items. There are two items that were going to be requesting funds from the general fund, and that wasn't clear about whether or not those funds had been provided from a grant. And to make it sort of short here, we're as you have probably seen from reading the paper this morning and from talk among you, this is going to be we're in the process of finishing out the fiscal year budget and where we're going to allocate the remaining resources, and it's going to be very tight this year and next year, and we want to make sure that we account for all the people's money that comes from the general fund from property taxes. And so I was not clear that these funds had been generated by an outside grant, or whether in fact they're going to be taken out of the general fund. And if they're going to be taken out of the general fund without a matching grant, then I had an issue with that, because I wanted to make sure that in our process, we all had a chance to properly address each one of these programs individually, rather than do something like a rush to judgment the last minute, which is what happened last night after we adjourned our meeting. So I thought, in the interest of having clarity on these issues, we'd wait 2 weeks for county manager to come back and more properly brief the board on where exactly these funds are going to come from, and then make a decision. That's the whole process here. So it's not that we're not going to be addressing them. We're just going to take another couple weeks to look at them more carefully, and then we'll vote on them in a couple weeks.
Yes, sir. We'll do a better job of making sure that we explain it more fully to the board, sir.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces. No criticism meant. Just there's a lot of things going on right now this year for some reason. So with that, I move to revise the consent agenda by deleting consent items number 27 and 28.
Second.
Do you have any discussion? And call the question. Okay, and that passes 5-0. I now make a second motion to approve the consent agenda as revised, including the pulling of items 27 and 28, and authorize the execution of the necessary documents by the appropriate county personnel. Second. I have a second. Any discussion? Call the question. And it passes 5-0. So thank you for working with the board. I appreciate that. All right, now we're going to be moving 9 up to 6, right? Help me, Millie. With that, first of all, first item is to recommend the appointment of a new police chief. And what I'd like to do is go ahead and make the motion to do so, and then ask for comments from the board. And before I do so, we have a number of VIPs this morning from Clayton County. We have Sheriff Victor Hill and also Councilman Michael Edmonton. So, plus other members of the government and public safety department there, and friends and guests. So with that, I want to welcome every one of you to this presentation and to our board meeting, and you're always welcome. We're sorry we're taking maybe one of your members, but your loss is our gain, I hope. And I'm sure that'll be the case. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Commissioners approve the appointment of Mr. Michael Register as the Chief of Police effective June 13th, 2007.
Second.
And discussion. Wow. Okay. Please, Commissioner Burrow.
Well, this is a very exciting day, and I'd like to thank not only our guests from Clayton County, but also our own public safety, police, fire, and 911 and animal control for being here and such great support for Chief Register. I did not know Chief Register before he applied for this position. I know a lot of you did because he was here before, and everything I've heard has been extremely positive about working with him in the past. So I have gotten to know him recently, and I have to say that he is a man of true character. He has gotten engaged from the get-go, even before today, to show his support in the community, and I think he'll do an excellent job, and I'm here if you need me for anything, Chief. And I also got to meet his lovely wife, Keisha, so we're glad to have you here today, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrow. Any comments? Commissioner Ott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's difficult to make the comments I have to make because I don't want them to be perceived as an indictment or any comments about Mike Register. But I have concerns about the process that this board followed in the selection of the chief. Number one, we had one county manager when we started the process. We have a different county manager now. And I do not believe that the new county manager was given the opportunity to interview the 5 finalists as he should have, because he was the one making the recommendation. Basically, it's my belief and my feeling that a decision was forced upon Mr. Hosack, and I don't think that that's the way it should have been. Mike did a tremendous job during the interview process. It was good to get to know him. I was impressed with what I heard. But in that process, I was disappointed to see that some of my fellow commissioners and some of the other staff had meetings outside of the interview process, which I believe should not have happened. So I cannot support this selection because of the process that this board went through in making that selection. But I want to emphasize the fact that my vote is not a vote against Mike. It is a vote against the process that this board took in selection of the chief.
Commissioner Weatherford.
Thank you. In respect to Commissioner Ott, I completely disagree with him and his assessment, and the fact that this was a long, arduous process. Many people involved from day one. We had many fine candidates. They all went through the process. And as you might suspect, we were torn about what to do, whether internal and external, whether someone from outside, someone from inside. I think with our selection, almost unanimous selection, that what we got was somebody from the inside that's now on the outside and is coming back with a history here and a respect that we could not get from any other candidates. So I'm very honored that we have selected Chief Register, and I'm very proud to have been a small part of that. And I feel like it was the right selection, and this board made the right decision. Thank you.
Commissioner Cupid?
I'm pleased today to support Mike Register becoming our police chief here in Cobb County. As has been shared by other commissioners, this was not an easy process. We took this very seriously and weighed every candidate seriously. And the level of thoughtfulness and experience that Mr. Register showed during the process was unmatched, even amongst the sea of fine candidates. And I am excited about the opportunity to have someone here, as Commissioner Weatherford shared, had experience in Cobb, but also can bring other experience outside of Cobb to help us usher in what we'll see probably some changes coming to the way that we police as we have our presentation from the IACP today. I chose to go last, not knowing the level of concern brought by other commissioners, but wanted to go last because I thought I'd bring some levity to this hire. Because there's been a lot of discussion with respect to Mr. Register throughout the community. And one of the last comments I heard made me smile because I used to stay up late watching TV to catch Mr. Chuck Norris catching the bad guys. And there was an analogy made of Mr. Register being the new Chuck Norris of Cobb County. So I stay up late preparing for meetings, and people on the board think I'm kind of a serious person, but I just had a kick out of going through Chuck Norris jokes last night, and I've got to share a few. I don't even know where to start.
Bear rug's a good one.
Chuck Norris has a diary. It's called the Guinness Book of World Records. When Chuck Norris was born, he drove his mom home from the hospital. Chuck Norris can kill 2 stones with 1 bird. When a zombie apocalypse starts, Chuck Norris doesn't try to survive, the zombies do. And my last one.
Let me help you out, I got one.
You do? Yeah, why don't you go ahead and help me, because I'm
Chuck Norris has a bear rug in his living room. It's not dead, he's just afraid to move.
Good one.
And with that, I call the question.
We look forward to the level of strength and seriousness that you'll provide, but not just seriousness with respect to the technical aspect of public safety, but seriousness with respect to the opportunity that we have to all serve together in our community, create as safe a community in Cobb County as possible. We thank you for coming on board.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. And I call the question. And it passes 4-1. Thank you very much. And with that, with the new Chief of Police, Michael Register, please come forward. Sit down there.
Well, Chief, we got to swear him in. And I would, Keisha, I'd like for you to come up, please. Yeah. Any other family, sir? Anyone else you would like to have up?
I would like to have my 2 prior deputy chiefs come up, Deputy Chief Woodall and Hawkins, and my 2 current deputy chiefs come up. Deputy Chief Prince and Deputy Chief Cox.
Well, before I get started, I'll just say congratulations, Mike. I had an opportunity to meet Mike about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, and during that time, even before a position came available, we struck up a friendship and met on quite a few occasions, just talking about life and talking about careers and everything. So I'm really excited to have an opportunity to work with Mike and see him lead this organization. Cobb has always had a tremendous police department and public safety departments, and so I think just this is an opportunity to make it even better. So with that, sir, I'd like for you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Michael Register.
I, Michael Register.
Swear I am qualified.
Swear I am qualified.
To hold the office to which I'm appointed.
To hold the office to which I am appointed.
And for so long as I am employed with Cobb County Police Department.
And for so long as I am employed with the Cobb County Police Department.
I do solemnly swear.
I do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend.
I will support and defend.
The Constitution of the United States of America.
The Constitution of the United States of America.
And the Constitution of the State of Georgia.
And the Constitution of the State of Georgia.
And I will faithfully perform.
And I will faithfully perform.
And discharge the duties of my position.
Discharge the duties of my position.
Conscientiously and without malice or partiality.
Conscientiously and without malice and partiality.
To the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability.
I further swear.
further swear
that I am not the holder
I am not the holder
of any public monies due this or any other state
of any public monies due this or any other state
or political subdivision unaccounted for.
or political subdivisions unaccounted for.
I further swear
I further swear
to obey,
to obey,
to adhere
to adhere
to uphold, and to enforce
to uphold, and to enforce
the laws of the United States of America
the laws of the United States of America
and of the state of Georgia at all times.
and of the state of Georgia at all times.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. You're welcome home.
I'll take just a couple of minutes. First, let me say thank you for the commissioners for giving me this opportunity and the support. And Commissioner Ott, I respect your decision, and I will certainly work hard to show that the board made a good decision hiring me. But thank you. And you know, I've got it's a privilege and an honor to come back to Cobb County and be the chief of police. This is a great county. It's a great department, a great community. Dr. Williams had a great conversation with Dr. Williams and many of the community leaders yesterday. It lasted, like he said, a couple of hours, 2.5 hours, but it was a great conversation, and I appreciate that, and I look forward to other conversations. All the men and women, I have two agendas. The men and women that work for me and the community. That's my only two agendas. And everything that I do is meant to make Cobb County a better police department and to make Cobb County a better and safer community. And I appreciate all the support that I have gotten from the men and women at Cobb County, the government. But I also have to tell you this, a little bittersweet. Leaving Clayton County. Clayton County will always be a special place for me, and it will have a special place in my heart. I look around and I see many people, friends that I've made in Clayton County. I have Vice Chairman Michael Edmondson. He came up this morning for this event. Colonel Kennison, retired. I worked for him when I was in Washington, D.C. He's here. Honorary General Marty Salter is here, that kept everybody in line during those years. Everyone knows Mark Winnie, his beautiful wife, is here. I appreciate you coming. Sheriff Hill, always been a great supporter of mine down there. We have Dennis Nelson here, who is the incoming president of the GACP. He came. Mark Vincent, the Deputy Director of Homeland Security at GEMA, came, and there's just many, many more. You know, friends that I have, the chaplains from Clayton County, some of my command staff. I have citizens, the community from Clayton County that came, and you know, that means a lot. You didn't have to do that. I can do nothing else for you except be a friend, so you're here because of the relationship that we have made and we fostered down there. And my only hope is that I perform as I should here, and I develop those type of friendships here in Cobb County, and I will work very hard to be the best chief that I can be. And I've got my two deputy chiefs here, Deputy Chief Cox, and I want to congratulate him. He's been the interim chief for several months now. Let's give him a hand. And I don't think we could have found anybody that would have performed better than Deputy Chief Cox as the interim chief. And I was beginning to think, hey, I don't think you need anybody else. You got a great chief. And of course, Deputy Chief Prince. And they're my two deputy chiefs now, but I have to look over and look at my two deputy chiefs that are in Clayton County, Deputy Chief Hawkins and Deputy Chief Woodall, that were my rock and the team that I had there, and I really appreciate all the hard work and all the help and all the mentoring and everything that I learned from you two. And I look forward to working with the two deputy chiefs, and I look forward to working with everyone else at the Cobb County Police Department, Cobb County government, Chief Kreider, working with Mr. Hosack, Director Heaton, the commissioners, to make Cobb County truly a great place. And I'll end this. Colonel Kennison told me one time when I was working for him that no matter what leadership style you think you have or how effective it is, at the end of the day, when you exit from whatever you're doing, if you can't truly say that you've left it better than you found it in the people that you were in charge of, and in this setting, the people that work for me in the community knew that you care, then something's wrong. You need to reevaluate your leadership style. I will take that same philosophy here. I want to leave Cobb County, when that day comes, better than I found it, and I want the community and everyone that works with me on my team to know that I truly do care. And thank you again for this opportunity and privilege.
Thank you. Chief, yes, one last.
And the person that is going to pin the badge on me this morning, and I guess I won't have another chance to talk after I get the badge pinned on me, is my beautiful wife, Keisha. And she's not only my wife, she's my best friend. And I don't know how God blessed me to bump into her. I hope she feels the same way. And but certainly I love her, and you're not just my wife, you're my best friend, and I appreciate you being beside me to start this new journey. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, the official pinning, Keisha. Very good. Congratulations, sir.
Thanks for coming. Okay. I think you can talk to Mike about that. All right.
Mr. Chairman, as
Sure,
you
go
know, I
ahead.
have to leave.
Absolutely.
But I just want to, for the next agenda item, and I don't know if I can do this, but first off, I want to register that my vote would be yes on the next agenda item. But I want to clarify some things that we heard earlier. The Windy Hill Terrell Mill connector was long contemplated before the Braves was ever announced, so Mr. Casella's comments are incorrect. Also, there are over 2,200 parking spots that are now in the Galleria, 638 now and another 1,650 coming in July, which constitutes just under 20% of the parking on the south side of the I-285 bridge. And finally, there are numerous vaults. There have been the accusation that there are no vaults on the site. And there are actually 4 vaults, and there's a rather large vault just outside of the stadium. So I support the vote for the 11.8 million. As discussed previously when the board approved the list, it is something that the county committed to and approved, and the agenda item today is just the how the funding will be done. So I'd like to register my vote.
Okay, I
in
appreciate
support.
the comments. Thank you, Commissioner, and good luck with that ceremony down there. All right. We'll let the celebration go out the door here. Go there, Moby. He was, yes. All right. The next agenda item under this tab is to approve the funding of the approved list of projects as it relates to SunTrust Park and the surrounding development construction items. And what I've asked Mr. Hosak to do is to put the language and then the project list up on the screen. And what I'm going to let everybody do is I'm going to let everybody read the wording so you can see what we're talking about here. And if you have to walk right up to the television monitor to do that, I understand. But there's I think it's what, four screenshots? So there'll be 4 screenshots. I'm going to let you read through those. And while you're reading through those, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion to approve the agenda item, and then we'll discuss it after it's been seconded, if it is seconded. So that, I make a motion that the Board of Commissioners authorize the funding for the previously approved public transportation infrastructure project list representing the minimum county contribution as described in the transportation infrastructure provision of the development agreement in the amount of $11,293,318, and authorize the corresponding budget transactions and further authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
Second.
And with that, we'll have discussion. I'll just wait for us to read through it. And you'll see the last slide will have all these items with the amounts associated with them. Oh, hold on, go back. The speed reading course isn't for me. And Mr. Hosak, what is R&E and W&S bond resolution? What do those initials stand for?
That is actually in the water system, in the water fund,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
I just want to make sure that people understand what those letters stand for.
It's return and
Or Steve colors.
I'll have to specify, I want to make sure I'm.
Is Steve here?
No, sir, he is not. I want to make sure
Oh,
that
he's on.
I want to make sure that I give you the correct
Okay.
title for the E, and I'll find that out
All right.
and make sure the board is aware.
And about the W&S bond resolution, that water and sewer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry about setting you up like I apologize. I should have asked earlier. Probably some.
The E is for extension.
Oh, there
Thank
go.
you, Mr.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so it's the,
Did you make a motion?
yes.
Second.
We did, yeah. I'm just waiting for them to finish up. Now we can show the last slide, which is the chart, right, please. And this chart hasn't changed from the one we approved, about 2 months ago. Thank you. I appreciate doing that, making that bigger for everybody to read. So the bottom line is, at the bottom right-hand corner of the slide is the amount that we'll be paying to the, to settle this issue.
Can't see it. I can't see it. Oh, there.
Okay, discussion, Commissioner Burrow?
Sure. Yes, as you previously mentioned, this list was approved a few months ago. And I would just like to say that, I mean, when we approved the MOU and the development agreement, we agreed to the minimum 14 million, and I think, that with some hard work and negotiations on our behalf with the former county manager and the Braves, I think that we found a way to fund this, and I support it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? Commissioner Cupid?
Yes, Chairman. I appreciate the level of thought that was put into this agenda item, but have shared with the board and publicly that I can't support this list of items here to substantiate the county contribution to the transportation elements of the Brave Stadium. When we drafted our MOU and our development agreement, there were other lists of projects that were included with those documents. And the list of projects that were referred to in those documents are not reflected in how we're substantiating our contribution today. The transportation projects in both of those lists, which we even shared publicly online when we had our Braves website up, and are included in an exhibit within our development agreement, have projects which any person would consider to be transportation oriented. While our development agreement does provide breadth to include sewer with respect to our transportation contribution, I think that this would really cause people to question how direct we are, or how question our thought and how we verge from transportation-oriented projects to the bulk of these projects being from sewer. In light of the funding challenges that we had when we approved the Brave Stadium, we had always questioned how the county was able to venture into this project, considering the economic challenges that the county was getting out of. And we're certainly glad that we are moving into better days today, but as has been shared earlier in our work session, we still are climbing out of a hole here in the county. And there have been other obligations that this county has made. And so it's been very frustrating. It's been very frustrating because when the Brave Stadium came up in 2013, I was a new commissioner. It's very frustrating to see the amount of rapidity and creativity that's been used towards this project, but not on other pressing matters that concern our public and that people have come here and spoken to our Board of Commissioners about being priorities here in the county. Some of the things that we have weighed yesterday that have direct impact on our service levels have not been given the same level of rapidity of thought and creativity of thought to figure out how we fund those things. But yet we've been very quick to just negotiate against our own interest in saying we're going to meet our prior obligation for this project. I would just behoove us to know that we have many prior obligations for our entire county, and it's very difficult to support this, even though, as anyone knows, the Brave Stadium is a beautiful place. My family and I, we've been there, but it's just, I just think there needs to be some parity in how we reflect in the past, the history with this project and where we stated we were going with it, and also the looking at our county and seeing where we're trying to go. So with that, again, I appreciate the amount of thought. This did not happen overnight to get to this list of projects. This was a lot of work, but I just can't support it.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner. Commissioner Weatherford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm somewhat unique in that I was not here when the Braves were approved, and I have been on record saying that I certainly would have supported this and am a great supporter of this project. Anyone can tell by the economic growth in that area that it's directly attributed to this project. And I think it was very wise of the county to spend 300+ million to get a $1.2 billion investment. Our tax digest has grown year over year, and we have yet to see some of the development and some of the projects that are going on there, especially the battery and the Class A office buildings, even come on our tax rolls. But as the chairman says, there's been a lot of splosh beer cups going on down there, and that 1 cent helps a lot to our transportation causes. So by any stretch of the imagination, this has been an economic success and a wise investment. This particular area of the 14 million was somehow or another pushed aside or forgotten about or lost or whatever. And I commend the chairman and Commissioner Ott for coming up with a string of history of this, which we all saw. And there was one particular one that was, to me, solved the problem. And we, as a Department of Transportation, listed this particular item, $14 million, as one of the projects around the Brave Stadium. When that was found, then I certainly saw that we're obligated to this, and I support it, and glad that we can finally put this to bed and that we can move on. And I hope as soon as all the other projects come online, we'll see continued economic growth and success in there, and I support this item.
This is a difficult issue to navigate, having come on only a few months ago, seems longer, some days.
Dog years.
But I heard both sides, and here's the challenge. First of all, it boils down to me a simple issue of we gave our word and we have to do it. Now the question is how we do it, and that's the point that Commissioner Cupid is raising, and I think it's a valid one, which makes my commitment to not only her but the rest of the commissioners to make sure that whenever we have ventures, whether regardless of the magnitude, my commitment to them has been no surprises, that I get out in front of it, tell them why I think this is important, but more importantly, that I hear their voices and let them vote their conscience. The Braves, the history of whether or not this will be a successful venture has yet to be proven. It certainly is on the right road right now, but I've been working with the finance and some outside people to work on a return on investment based on what we know right now. And then I plan to give that product to the commissioners here real soon, so that, again, when we comment about issues like this, that I give as much information as I have, so when I speak to something, they know where I'm coming from. So I do not make light of this matter. I do not. I understand the implications. This is more than just about a $14 million investment by the county. This goes much deeper than that, about what does it mean to be a county government and how do we run that government. And the process that we used to get here, I hope that everyone, at least the board, sees that I did everything I possibly could to explain where I was coming from. But more importantly, I hope the commissioners always realize is that they felt no restraint on how they would address this issue with me or the other commissioners, that we'd respect their opinion, and then we would vote on it, which is how government works in this county. So I guess the message I'm taking here is that we'll be watching this very closely, because it is the people's money. It is, and we're going to make sure that we live up to our commitments. But we have other commitments in this county too that are just as important, if not more important. Taking care of our employees, who I believe are undercompensated. The commitments to green space. There are a number out there, and they're all important to me. And I will do as much as I can, as I did on this project, to show the commissioners, put out in front of them and give them the time to consider it. And then, as I tell people, we do no voting until it's time, which to me is when all the facts are in and then we're comfortable making the vote, we'll do that. So I appreciate the comments by all the commissioners here this morning. I do not make light of how the gravity of this project. I'll be very honest in saying that I'm not quite sure yet about public-private investments means that both sides bring equal competency to that issue. And I'm not sure yet that our government is structured to take advantage or to work with this. this magnitude project. But I think the commissioners know where I'm coming from on that, and we will not just let this be a one and done. We'll continue to monitor this project very carefully, but also commit to the county on other projects to let them know that we're just as serious about bringing those issues forward. And I really appreciate Commissioner Cupid's comments about the creativity. We need to bring that also to these big issues. So with that, I only have one technical question. I think even though Commissioner Ott said he would support it, we cannot register his vote because he's not here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I don't want to have people coming back 6 months saying, we need to redo this. So with that, I will call the question. That's okay, it's all right. So it passes 3-1 with Commissioner Cupid in opposition and Commissioner Ott being excused for another commitment. So with that, thank you very much. Now let's go, see if I get the right sequence here. Now we're going to go to number 7, right? 6? Okay, I was wrong. Again. All right, with that, we have Mr. Wilgus. You want to take a short break? Okay.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. County Manager. We have 5 items this morning. The first one is to approve supplemental agreement number 1 and change order number 1 to the contract with Brassfield and Gorey LLC for construction of the Windy Ridge Parkway Bridge pedestrian improvements. The Windy Ridge Parkway Bridge pedestrian improvements project consists of the widening of the existing Windy Ridge Parkway Bridge over I-75 and the I-285 ramps to provide enhanced pedestrian accommodations and greenway space. During construction, revisions to the western end of the project were required to accommodate the newly constructed Battery Atlanta pedestrian bridges over Circle 75 Parkway and Windy Ridge Parkway. Revisions included adjustments to the approach slab, concrete paving, increased height of the mechanically stabilized earth wall, and additional cast-in-place wall, and additional handrail. Supplemental agreement number 1 in the amount not to exceed $983,979.16 is requested for the addition of the required revisions. Change order number 1, a savings to the project in the amount of $687,618.44 is requested for the reduction of required quantities resulting from the revisions. The net result is an increase to the contract with Brassfield Gorey LLC in the amount not to exceed $296,360.72. We request the Board of Commissioners approve supplemental agreement number 1 to the contract with Brassfield and Gorey LLC in an amount not to exceed $983,979.16 for construction of Windy Ridge Parkway Bridge pedestrian improvements, and approve change order number 1, a savings to the project, savings to the contract in the amount of $687,618.44 for a total net increase of $296,360.72.
Commissioner Rutherford?
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Call a question? Passes 4-0 with Commissioner Ott in excused absence.
Thank you, sir. Item number 2 is to approve change order number 1 final to the contract with TMI Services, Inc. for 2015 countywide pavement marking. Pavement markings are an important component of the department's system of traffic control devices on county thoroughfare roads. As a part of the annual maintenance program for FY15, the department recommended replacing pavement markings on 33 roads. The project is complete, and change order number 1 final to the contract with TMI Services, Inc., a savings to the project in the amount of $65,464.42 is requested due to variations between the original and final plan quantities. We request the Board of Commissioners approve change order number 1 final to the contract with TMI Services, Inc., a savings to the project in the amount of $65,464.42 for 2015 countywide pavement marking.
Commissioner Rutherford?
Commissioner, motion to approve is presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. Passes 4-0 with Commissioner Ott excused absence.
Thank you, sir. Item number 3 is to approve a contract with Glosson Enterprises LLC for Piedmont Road West Sidewalk. Sidewalks is an approved component in the 2011 SPLOST Transportation Improvement Program. The low bid of $140,830 from Glosson Enterprises LLC was reviewed and found to be reasonable and responsive. The completion date for this project is 45 consecutive calendar days from issuance of notice to proceed. We request the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Glosson Enterprises LLC in an amount not to exceed $140,830 for Piedmont Road West sidewalk.
Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. It passes 4-0 with the commissioner excused absence.
Thank you, sir. Item number 4 is to amend a previously approved Cobb Framework Agreement with the City of Smyrna for thoroughfare and mobility improvements on Windy Hill Road. Windy Hill Road is an approved thoroughfare and mobility improvement project in the 2011 and 2016 SPLOST Transportation Improvement Program. The project, also known as Windy Hill Boulevard, consists of a boulevard concept that includes roadway widening, intersection improvements, and pedestrian improvements from South Cobb Drive to Atlanta Road. This is a joint project with the City of Smyrna. We request the Board of Commissioners amend a previously approved Cobb Framework Agreement with the City of Smyrna for thoroughfare and mobility improvements on Windy Hill Road.
Mr. Cupid?
Yes, this portion of Windy Hill Road was once in District 2 and it's now in District 4. And as I become educated about this project, I'm learning that the improvements made to Windy Hill Road have contributed to congestion in this stretch, even though this project is fully within the City of Smyrna. But the Windy Mac connector has just caused there to be challenges with how traffic is moving there, which is why we have the 50% match. So I think this is new for me to have a project of this nature fully within a city, but in light of the scope, I'll move to approve this item.
Okay, here is a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. Passes 4-0 with Commissioner Ott excused absence.
Thank you, sir. Our final item is to approve project number E 7420-TO number 02 to the 2016 Master Task Order contract with American Engineers, Inc. for engineering design of Shallowford Road sidewalk. Sidewalks is an approved component in the 2011 SPLOST Transportation Improvement Program. We request the Board of Commissioners approve project number E 7420-TO number 02 to the 2016 Master Task Order contract with American Engineers, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $95,000 for engineering design of Shallowford Road sidewalk.
Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you. I, with pleasure, make a motion to approve much-needed sidewalks.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. Passes 4-0 with Commissioner
you,
Ott
sir.
excused absence. Thank you, Jim. All right, now we're moving on to tab 7. And Ms. Stanley?
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager. On August 9th, 2016, the Board of Commissioners authorized a public hearing for professional services for design, development, and implementation of a new web portal for Cobb County government, and authorized issuance of a request for proposal for these services. The web portal project is an eligible project under the 2016 SPLOST. Business Technology Transformation is an approved project of the Support Services Technology Improvements Work Program, which includes creating an e-government presence. Funds are available in the 2016 SPLOST Technology Improvement Program for this project. An evaluation committee comprised of members from Communications, State Court Clerk, Public Safety, Community Development, Cobb Travel and Tourism, Parks, and Information Services reviewed the proposals. Interpersonal Frequency was selected as the top-ranked proposer based on their ability to best meet the requirements of the web portal proposal, their portfolio of award-winning websites and portals, and their innovative data-driven approach of engaging the public through their Voice of the Citizen analytics platform. We are requesting the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Interpersonal Frequency in an amount not to exceed $479,850 for planning, design, development, and implementation of a web portal for Cobb County government, authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and further authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Burrow?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Sharon. I think this will be a great project
I'm excited.
once it's up and running. Yeah, very exciting. I would like to make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
As
No
presented.
comment. Yes, this has been a long, yes, second. This has been a long time coming, and I'm glad to see this moving forward. Now, I'm not a tech person, so to speak. So when you say web portal, you mean website, web page?
Yes, ma'am.
So
We
it's
say
gonna
web
look
portal because it's where
different.
all of the transactions for the county will come in.
Okay, very good,
Very glad to support
Yes,
this
ma'am.
agenda item.
So I have a motion from Commissioner Burrow, a second from Commissioner Cupid. We had discussion, call the question. Passes 4-0 with
Thank you,
Commissioner
sir.
Ott excused absence. And Eddie?
Morning, Chairman, Commissioners, and County Manager. This morning I have two items. First item is for the Board of Commissioners to approve a contract for Carithers, Wallace, and Courtney Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $457,000 for furnishings for the East Marietta Library and Culture Center. This is a 2016 SPLOST project. It is located at 2051 Lower Roswell Road in Marietta. Ask that you authorize the corresponding budget transactions and further authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Weatherford?
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
And we have some questions, we have some discussion. Commissioner Burrow?
This is a designated SPLOS project on the 2016 SPLOS list, and I do support this project. My concern is staffing once the Library and Cultural Arts Center is completed, because we do not have the staffing funded and approved in the 2018 budget. So I support the project. It is a designated SPLOST item, but funding the staff and the maintenance and upkeep is not approved, because we haven't approved a budget yet. So that is a concern.
You have a comment?
I do.
Okay, Commissioner Weatherford.
Director Cannon, he mentions that there's a budget balance of 242. Is that for this particular project, or is that for the general FF&E for all of that? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to catch you off guard.
Yeah, you did.
Do you know? It says an FF&E budget, which is that for this particular library or for all projects, you think?
There is more that will need to be purchased.
Oh, so that's designated for this as it goes.
Exactly right. That 240 is designated for the library.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
So there's money, there's more FF&E money left for other projects?
For this project.
Just for this project?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right. So we're actually breaking this up into phases.
We are.
All right. And to Commissioner Burrow's comment, which is a good one, it's exactly the kind of question that should be asked, is that starting next month, we'll be presenting the 2018 straw man budget to the commissioners. And at that time, just because we're authorizing these furniture right now, doesn't mean we have to buy them right now, does it? We can wait like a month or two to buy them?
If we're going to be ready to open the facility
right
in October, November, then we must order the furniture.
Okay, all right. Well, it's a SPLOST project, but again, we got to find some way to synchronize what her concerns are with how we're going to do the budget process. So if you just be sort of, Koshosek, just be sensitive to that issue here, because the 2018 budget is going to be very, very tight, and it doesn't do any good to buy stuff and there's nobody there to man them. And I'm leaving that up to the board to have that discussion starting next month when we present the draft 2018 budget to all of them. And I know that this discussion will highlight, certainly be one of the highlights of that discussion with 2018 budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, and I support Commissioner Burrell and her concern too.
Right.
Burrell. And also appreciate the robust discussion we had on how we move forward with SPLOST prioritization.
Right.
Moving forward.
And we need to have more clarity for the commissioners, and I'm working to do that for all of them.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Then I call the question. Passes 4-0 with Commissioner Ott in excused absence.
All right, next item is for the Board of Commissioners to approve or to authorize a purchase and installation from Controlled Access Incorporated on 3 emergency call stations in the Superior Court parking deck located at 30 Waddell Street in an amount not to exceed $11,943.90. This is a part of the 2016 SPLOST program under the Support Services Facilities Improvement Program, and I ask that you authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
Sorry, Eddie.
That's okay.
Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you. Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. And it passes 4-0 with Commissioner Rao excused absence.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Eddie. All right, we're going to go to tab 8 now. And I think what I'm going to do now is we're going to take a recess because they're going to do the ICP report after this. And so let's take a, sorry? That's all right. Okay. Let's take what, 10 minutes? Is that enough time?
Not for me, but you know.
Okay, 10 minutes, so we'll come back at 10 minutes to 11. Okay, we're back in session now after our short break. And we're going to go to tab A, Public Safety, in which we have a couple items, and Director Heaton.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager. The first item I have today is to approve an MOU or Memorandum of Understanding with the Cobb County Safety Village Foundation and a collaborative partnership to support the Safety Village. In 2009, when the Safety Village opened, along with the David Hankerson Education Building, the Cobb County Safety Village Foundation Incorporated was formed as a nonprofit corporation to organize and operate exclusively for charitable and educational purposes to support and benefit the Safety Village. As the village approaches its 10-year mark, it is important to continue efforts between Cobb County, Georgia, and the foundation. So a memo of understanding has been composed to outline the responsibilities of the parties and for future of the village. Ms. Carter, Allison Carter, directly at the Safety Village and Legal, has worked on this MOU for the last few months. And so with that, today our recommendation is for the Board of Commissioners to approve an MOU with the Cobb County Safety Village Foundation Incorporated in a collaborative partnership to support Safety Village and authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Weatherford.
Thank you for all your hard work, and motion to approve as presented.
We have a second. Any discussion? Call the question. It passes 4-0 with Commissioner Rao excused absence.
Thank you. Next item I have, sir, is to present information regarding the Cobb County Police Department Police Operations and Management Study. June 28, 2016, the Board of Commissioners approved a contract with the International Association of Chiefs of Police for a police policy assessment of the Cobb County Police Department. On May 18, 2017, the final report was released. Today, I have Mitch Weinzettel here from the IACP to present some of the findings. And really, the recommendation, sir, is just for you guys to hear some of the findings and consider those as we move forward. I will tell you, as Mitch works his way up here, that we have not had an opportunity yet to fully expose our new police chief to all of it, but he has reviewed the recommendations, and I can tell you that Chief Register and his staff are already working on some of the prioritization of some of the recommendations. But
Okay.
with that, Mitch, thanks.
Well, I think it's still morning. Good morning, Commissioner, Chairman, and appreciate the opportunity to address you. Did want to make mention that my Assistant Director, Carl Maupin, is here from our education team with IACP. And as Director Heaton mentioned, the objective here this morning is to give a brief overview of the report and of some of the key recommendations. As Dr. Williams pointed out, the report is rather lengthy, and I want to tell him I appreciate somebody actually reading it. And I also appreciate his characterization of it. As you can imagine, it is lengthy. I'm going to just hit a few of the highlights. Certainly we'll take any questions that you might have at the end. One of the things that I wanted to mention, I think, right at the outset, and this effectively came through the other discussion that occurred this morning, I kept hearing the word opportunity in a variety of manners. I think Dr. Williams used it, and I certainly heard that reference with regard to the police chief as well. I also would acknowledge the imperfect nature of the report that we have, such as it is, but we do view it as a document of opportunity. We do think that, as we noted in the report, there are many, many good things that the Cobb County Police Department does. Certainly reports of this nature are somewhat predisposed to look for things that could be improved upon, and to the untrained eye, they might suggest a level of repair that's required that suggests negatively, and we certainly want to make sure that's not the case. We have great confidence in the police department, and that was our observation throughout. So real quickly, wanted to just mention also Captain Farrell, who I think is out here somewhere. He and I exchanged, I don't know, probably 100 or so emails trying to get all the data together that we required to do the report, and certainly he was very instrumental in helping things move along. So I would like to talk a little bit about what we do, talk a little bit about the methodology, particularly from evaluating patrol staffing levels and investigation staffing levels, which tend to be the two key areas that organizations are looking at, in addition to non-sworn roles as well. Our methodology involves gathering a bunch of historical data. That data typically comes out of your record systems, coming out of your communication center or your internal record systems. We also generated a number of different data from primary data instruments that we created, various things that we asked for specifically in a way that data is gathered that typically isn't necessarily done internally. Some of those things relate to leave data and some other categories, which we'll touch on. We then analyze the data, and then we get into our workload model for patrol. And this is very important, I think, for people to understand. The IACP workload model for the patrol division is predicated on no more than 30% of an officer's time being dedicated to handling calls for service. So that means for the patrol officer that's on duty, from the time the dispatcher calls their number till they get to the call, finish the call, and tell the dispatcher they're done, that window of time is what we consider obligated workload. And that obligated workload per person throughout your staffing that's assigned to patrol should not exceed 30%. People say, well, so what do you do with the rest of the time? Well, the next 30% is all of the administrative time that it takes to do the work that police do. So that means evidence, gathering evidence, bagging and tagging it, writing reports, meetings, shift briefings, and so forth. The remaining 30% is for agencies that are inclined, and really this is the marker across the U.S., the remaining 30% is time that's allocated for community policing or individual activity that officers would engage. And that is, again, another critical element to this process. One of the pieces, and I'll show you a model a little bit further in the presentation, but one of the key ingredients here is this. If we raise the first 30%, it generally raises the second 30% by the same margin. So if the first 30% was 33, the next one would be 33. And generally what happens is we start to see that 30% available for community policing start to squeeze down. If you've done your math right, you know there's 10% left over. That's a daily factor to be applied to any category based on general workload. But effectively, what we're trying to accomplish is no more than 30% obligated workload time with 30% allocated for community policing. I'm not going to go into these numbers in detail, but just understand that what you see here is a reflection of number of hours of workload allocated by category. And this is how we start to quantify the number of obligated workload based on the data that's in the CAD system or the computer-aided dispatch system that's coming out of records. And what you'll see at the top of the chart is those folks that are specifically dedicated toward patrol. The next category is people that are supplemental patrol. I've shortened up the chart. Under the non-patrol category, there are a number of different folks within there that would not, it might be school officers or other things that would not typically be associated with patrol activities. Again, what we're trying to assess here is how many actual hours of activity fall into the obligated workload category. Once we understand what that first CAD number is, we start to peel away the layers and we take out the non-patrol workload. Again, I mentioned those things that would not normally be obligated workload. We've also added in officer-initiated criminal calls for service. And I should back up and just mention, when we talk about obligated workload, we're talking about citizen-initiated now, not coming from officer-initiated. But one of the things that we know is that if an officer is involved in a criminal activity, likely someone would have called us had the officer not taken that action. So we consider that to be obligated workload as well. So in this chart, what you can see is we've broken down, we're taking out the officer-initiated activity. We've added those criminal calls for service that would have resulted in a call had the officer not happened upon the incident or been waved down. And then we also added the supplemental hours from patrol. In this next slide, what you see, and this is an important one, and this relates to supplanting. One of the things that we see in different organizations, and it's also a common factor here in Cobb County, is that based on the volume of work, based on the workload that officers are engaging, sometimes they're not available to take a call. And so people that are assigned other duties, which normally would not take primary calls for service, end up taking those calls. We call that supplanting because based on the way that we categorize that data, those hours would not normally fall within the patrol workload, the obligated workload total. As we look at those hours, we identified approximately 14,000 hours across that entire 1 year span that would go into or be added to the workload calculation. And again, the result, what you see is the adjusted patrol workload number, which is 149,000 hours and some change. Effectively, based on our analysis, that number reflects the amount of calls from the time someone called dispatch to the time the officers finished the calls. That's the allocated amount of time that your patrol officers need to respond to on a consistent basis. Next, please. One of the areas that we often identify, and it relates back to supplanting, has to do with in-beat and out-of-beat response. For those of you that may not understand this, police typically assign officers a geographic space to remain in to handle calls for service. And there are a lot of reasons for that, not the least of which is building relationships and understanding that section of the community in a way that is consistent over time. But what you can see from this chart is that in 39% of the cases, officers were responding out of their assigned beat. So that's suggestive of either workloads that are too high, staffing levels that are too low, or personnel allocations that may not be appropriately aligned. We start getting into a little math here, but the bottom line is when we imagine when someone drives from their assigned area to another area, they need to get back. Our call for service time will calculate the time it takes to get there, but it doesn't calculate the time coming back. If we take that time and we capture that time and we analyze that against how much time officers have available on an annual basis, currently Cobb County is losing the equivalent workload of 24 officers annually because of out-of-beat response. So that really suggests that we make some modifications to those things that I talked about, staffing, personnel allocations, to make sure that we minimize those external beat responses. This is a rather busy chart. I'm not going to go over the whole thing with you, but really what is really important is there's 3 separate models here. The model number 3 specifically identifies how many hours of activity there are and what the authorized strength of patrol should be in order to breach a 30% margin. Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt. Let me ask a question on the previous slide.
Sure.
You didn't mention, could it also possibly be that the zones or the beats are assigned incorrectly, that maybe they're not geographically correct, and which is the reason an officer has to leave a beat to go to another beat, that maybe the beats need to be realigned?
Commissioner, that's a great point. Beat alignment, beat design, beat size, there are other things, even adding, for example, a stadium, which tends to pull a amount of resources. Those things can all affect the deployments. Ultimately, it's a combination of a multitude of different things to include all of the things that we mentioned, but you're right. Geographic design, and in a more perfect world, when we're looking at beat assignments, one of the things that we want to do is use geopositioning systems to drill down and see which calls are occurring where and what makes the most sense in terms of beat design. There are other factors, though, roadways, waterways, and other things that interfere with some of those typical designs. So they're not always equidistant, but also keep in mind, Cobb County is a big county. And so you have a large geographic area that must be covered in order to at least have personnel deployed in some areas. And again, that's one of the issues that you have because of the vastness of the county. You just simply don't have enough penetration of personnel in each of the beats to manage the volume of work consistently all the time. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So ultimately, in the end, what we're looking at here is the chart that shows the 30% differential. If we move over to the third column, effectively what we are indicating is that the authorized strength in patrol of approximately 300 officers would get you to a 30% obligated workload allocation. We're going to show you in a little bit how there's some issues with that and why that number really isn't reflective of what the current condition is within the police department. Next, please. This is a depiction of the citizen calls for service. If you see the lower line, the orange line that kind of has the bell curve, this is the volume of calls for service starting at 5 o'clock in the morning on one side, ending at 5:30 a.m. on the other side. And on the top, where the numbers in the blue bars are, those represent the hourly staffing allocations by the county. Captain Farrell has done some excellent work on schedule design. And one of the things that we typically don't see in police agencies is a strong corollary between call volumes and staffing. In other words, a lot of places staff at the same number all the time, even though call volumes are lower at certain periods and higher at other periods. Arguably, there are some peaks and valleys here that could be improved upon, but this is actually a pretty good model comparatively, particularly as we've looked at other agencies. This is another chart that just helps us understand when does the activity occur within the community? When are the calls coming into the police department? From the graph here, we've separated these into 8-hour blocks, even though the department works 10-hour shifts. What you can see, though, is that your overnight calls are the lowest. That's from about 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And, of course, 7 to 3, it's about 36%. And with the bulk of that activity coming in that middle of the afternoon, that 45%. And so if you can just go back once to the prior slide. So this is something we really have to be aware of when we start talking about staffing and scheduling and where our personnel are allocated, because when we have that 50%, keep in mind that's 50% of our volumes coming in here. Do we have 50% of our personnel allocated to manage that? And again, I think despite the fact that Captain Farrell's done a lot of good work on this, probably a little bit of room there to look at some of those numbers to see if there's a way to adjust those favorably. Next, go 2, please. I talked about hours and data that we collected, and one of the misnomers is that we think about how many hours someone works as 2,080, and really that's what we pay them for. What they actually work is lower than that based on vacation, sick leave, training, and other things. And we look at that number because it's important when we look at that 30% number, that 30% number that the officer's available is based on the actual hours they're working, the actual productive hours. From this chart, we can see that the average officer in the patrol division is working about 1,789 hours on the road each year. Those other hours are accounted for, but again, they don't contribute toward turning the key and driving to a call and coming back. So this is an important number because as we look at the actual number of staff that you need, we're going to calculate the 30% based off of that 1,789. This is a mock-up of when we look at how many personnel it takes to staff positions, we use what we call a shift relief factor. We take that 2080 and we realize it's only 1,789 and we factor in that loss of personnel. If you look at this chart, what we have done is we've said, look, if you just put one person in each beat, each shift, how many people would it take? And the result is it's 258 officers. Now keep in mind, as I mentioned, when we looked at that schedule slide, that 258 does not account at all for peaks and valleys in the way that the schedule is aligned, okay? So when we look at the 258, that's just a minimum staffing net level to cover one in each beat. It's the reason why the numbers reflect and why we have suggested that the actual number of officers that are required is actually 301. Next, please. This is a patrol allocation by precinct, and this just demonstrates how many officers are allocated by precinct based on the work volume. You can see that precinct 2, for example, has actually almost 28% of the volume, but only 21% roughly of the personnel allocated. And conversely, precinct 5 is kind of in the opposite condition with about 4% more personnel than what the volume measures. Keep in mind, these shift and change, and precinct alignments, beat alignments will tend to change these numbers, as will, for example, the addition of a stadium that will change some of those numbers as well. We certainly recommend being cognizant of these and making adjustments to those, not only at this point, but monitoring those annually to make sure that those allocations match what the volumes are. And I should also mention that Precinct 5 is smaller, and oftentimes what we see is there may be a disproportionate number of personnel, but that might be simply because that's how many it takes to staff one beat. So it may not be disproportionate in terms of the need, even though the volume is, you can't leave a beat unstaffed, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Next, please. So that's the section on patrol. I want to talk briefly about investigations, which is the next category. We looked at caseloads, other personnel data. We conducted interviews, did observations, and did an investigation survey. And let me just say that the patrol allocation numbers that we talked about, the model that we are using is actually a pretty nationally accepted model. There really is no set standard for investigation, caseloads, how many they're carrying, how long it should take to complete, and so forth. IACP has done a lot of work in this area, and we certainly have a lot of relevant history to be able to reference in that regard, but there's not the same level of standard in that way. So our recommendations, our conclusions, our analysis are based on an aggregate of our experience and an evaluation of the conditions that exist with regard to the Cobb County situation. Like the patrol numbers, here we see the investigations numbers. These are actually a little bit lower, 1,719 hours. And I think the biggest shift here with the investigations was additional training time that they're working, which certainly makes some sense. Next, please. This is a number of annual caseloads, and the criminal investigations unit within Cobb County there are centralized investigations and investigations that occur at the precinct level. You can see those broken down here. Really, the crux of this table is that if you look at the totals on the right-hand lower column, what you can see is that the actual caseload assignments are down over the last couple of years. There can be a variety of factors for that. That doesn't necessarily mean that there were less cases that should have been investigated. In some circumstances, although I cannot say that here, but in some circumstances, cases that perhaps could have been investigated get deferred because there are other cases that have a higher rate or a higher likelihood of being resolved or coming to a successful conclusion. But again, the bottom line is right now what we see is a slight decline in actual case assignments to the investigators over the last 3 years. Next, please. This is the average monthly caseloads, and this is an important slide because what it shows is the average caseload each investigator was handling on a monthly basis. One of the things I should mention, the auto theft, there's a couple of investigators working auto theft, and they work out of Precinct 2. But the other piece that's looking at this is that the numbers here are not significantly prohibitive. We do see in some other data that we receive from Cobb County that the average turnaround time on cases is roughly 30 days. So what that means is if I had 10 cases this month, I probably finished 10 and I ended up with 10 new ones. Again, those numbers are not prohibitive, at least not as it relates to what we see on averages and cases distribution of cases in other organizations as well. Next, please. Here we look at the investigator's capacity. And in this case, what we did, I mentioned that we did a survey of the investigators. And one of the things that we did is we asked them, what do you do with your time other than investigations? And roughly 20% of their time is allocated to other things that are legitimate, but maybe do not contribute directly toward investigating and solving cases. We've peeled that amount off, and so what you see is an average available hours of 1,326. That tells us what their hours per month. We divide their available cases, and that reveals how many hours they have available to investigate each case. I should mention that these numbers that you see are reflective of a fully staffed investigation unit. So in cases where we know that they've been running short, that would challenge their ability to have that same number of hours available for each of those cases. Again, these numbers don't seem prohibitive, although we did notice that crimes against children at only about 13 hours each is perhaps a little bit low. We did rely on some good analytical information for internal information on some of this, and one of the things that we would recommend is that the department continue to monitor these closely It's not our recommendation that we need to add personnel per se at this point, although we do think they need to be fully staffed. But there are some data gathering and reporting mechanisms that would provide a clearer picture in terms of whether there needs to be specific investigation additions to one of the particular categories that might be of question. Next. Again, this is part of a survey that we did with them. This is showing the current caseload of investigators against national averages. IACP did a survey about a year ago. We surveyed investigators across the U.S. We received about 1,000 replies, which is a pretty good sample group. And within that group, we asked them these same survey questions. And what you can see here is that the current caseloads and preferred caseloads with respect to what the investigators suggested are very consistent with what we see on the national averages. And again, not a cause for concern on our end in terms of whether there's sufficient personnel allocated. Next, please. So to summarize, I want to talk a little bit about what we call operational staffing level versus authorized staffing levels. And this has been a bit of an issue for police agencies in a lot of places that we go and study. Typically, we have an authorized strength, and I believe right now it's I think it's 690 is the authorized strength here. One of the problems is if agencies do not hire above that number, they never get to that number. And so one of the problems that comes in is when we go to analyze staffing levels, our objective is to say, how many people does it optimally take, effectively, efficiently, to do the work? We agree 690 is a good number. We think that's a reasonable number. 301 in patrol, 690 overall. These are sworn positions, by the way. What we are concerned about is that you have, on average, an attrition rate of approximately 60, and it takes about a year to hire those 60. And you also have a non-operational staffing level. Those are people that are on military leave, long-term disability, some other reason they cannot perform the job of a police officer. We conservatively estimated that number at 10. What that means is, in order for Cobb County to staff 690, you must hire at 760. And admittedly, there's a fiscal note associated with that. But what's been happening, and this is part of why what we analyze as the issue with regard to some of the out-of-beat response numbers is when your patrol division is running short, when your investigation division is running short, because you're not at 690, because you're really at 620 or 610. And again, agencies also sometimes count people that are in the academy. We have 690. Well, that's 30 or 40 or 50 people that are in the academy. Well, then you're not at 690, you're at 640 or 630, whatever that number might be. And those 60 positions are missing from somewhere. And so to kind of wrap this up, our assessment is that the staffing level in patrol should be at 301 consistently. And that means you're going to have to hire and train above that in order to stay there. Operationally, your minimum should be 690, and you should continue to monitor your annual attrition rates and your non-operational rates and hire above those numbers, typically called overhires in other communities. Again, we're very cognizant of, and I heard the chairman talking about budget constraints coming up. We're cognizant of the fact that there's a fiscal note associated with that, but our recommendation is that your optimal operating level is 690. Next, please. So I want to talk, I'm just going to cover a few of the key recommendations. It's been mentioned here that there are several in the report, and I'm not going to highlight them all, try to save us some time, but I want to just highlight a few. First of all is establish the operational minimum within the patrol division and the department and try to fill those. And again, that is there are some budgetary concepts that connect with that, and those are going to have to be worked out. We're confident that the numbers we've presented are reasonable. The second thing is to prioritize patrol and investigation staffing, and actually you do a better job of that here than some other places. Oftentimes when someone leaves the department, it's usually after they've been here a while, they leave a specialty assignment, that gets backfilled, which leaves a void in patrol or investigations. This department has done a better job of maintaining those positions, but we would certainly recommend that patrol and investigations be prioritized for staffing before some of the secondary work assignments that may be important, but frankly, we consider to be secondary compared to patrol investigations. I have some concerns about improving the public image of the department, particularly with regard to SWAT and Viper. We see these as important elements of the work that gets done in police departments, but they also have to be done in a certain manner and with a certain level of understanding, so that the community recognizes what they're doing, why they're doing it, why it's important, why it was necessary, and there are some recommendations in the report about that. We also looked at and talked about the revised approach to traffic enforcement, and one of the things that we think the county could improve on is more directed enforcement, specifically in areas where there are concerns about traffic, concerns over specific crash areas and causal factors related to crashes. And we also favor an approach that is certainly enforcement oriented, but also educational at the same time. And we think there's some things the county can do along that way, along those lines. Again, I mentioned this already. The investigations area, there are some things that could be improved upon. Right now, the way investigators are allocated to cases, in some cases, they're allocated to multiple sections, and it's not completely, the data isn't sufficient at this point to be able to pull those layers apart and figure out exactly how many hours it takes to do crimes against persons versus crimes against children versus sexual assault versus elder abuse, that kind of thing. So we would suggest looking at that a little more closely and then monitoring those numbers as you go forward. Next. Reemphasize community policing as a department strategy. You know, we heard throughout the organization that community policing is important, and we certainly believe that's a message that is circulating from leadership and through the organization. At the same time, many officers told us, and it was our observation, that they simply don't have time to do what we call meaningful community policing. We can have a nice contact, I can have a nice personal contact with you, but in terms of us looking at problem solving or overarching neighborhood issues and those kind of things, it makes it difficult to do when we're always running arrears in staffing. So certainly we want to reemphasize the importance of that, and that kind of goes hand in hand with ensuring that we have appropriate staffing. The next thing is acknowledging and addressing the public perceptions of racism and discrimination by the CCPD. Again, it's our assessment that the root cause of the lack of public trust and relationship issues within some members of the community rests with public perceptions of racism with regard to the police department and officers, and it's obviously an issue that needs to be addressed. We laid out a series of things that the leadership can do in order to address those things, not the least of which is something called the co-production police model, and I know that Dr. Williams mentioned this. I'm actually going to circle back to that and cover that last. One of the things that we mentioned a couple of different times is a citizen advisory committee, and you actually already have something similar to this in place within the community. But one of the things that we think there are a number of different vectors where that committee can be more directly engaged with the police department, and we think there's a lot of value in that. The other thing is collecting race and gender and contact and outcome data. Certainly, it's important for police agencies to know and understand who we're coming into contact with, but in order for us to self-analyze and make sure that we're doing things the right way, one of the things we need to be able to do is to say, not only are these the people we came into contact with, but here's what happened as a result of that contact. So we would recommend that. Also, a multiple contact monitoring system. Again, this is in the report, but we borrowed this idea from another police agency, and the essence of this is that if someone's name gets entered into the police record system on a fixed number of times over a fixed period of time, it sends a flag to a supervisor to take a look at that and see what's going on here. Is somebody harassing this person, or is this person somebody that we really need to pay attention to for some other reason, which might require an even greater level of scrutiny? But it provides a measure of relief for those people who might be getting multiple contacts with no apparent reason or no real explanation. So again, we think that's a very positive thing to implement. And it's our understanding that even even though there are some limitations, as we understand it, with some of the record systems and so forth with the police department, this is something that they could do. So might need a little programming, but something that could be done. So I want to circle back to the co-production model and just talk about that for a minute. And in the police world, and I'll steal Dr. Williams' characterization of a new word, the new phrase, community co-production. We see this as an evolution. We've talked about community policing for a long time in the policing industry, but community policing, certainly while it has been problem solving and engaging the community, a lot of times has been informational. There's been exchanges, there's been information, but the real key distinction as we see it in a co-production model is the measure of influence that the public has over the things that the police department engages, things from setting policy to resource allocations and so forth. So the word influence here is quite intentional, and I think it does represent a significant shift in that level of engagement with the community and what that looks like. One of the things that is not widely known at this point is that the IACP became aware that there was some private funding available by a funder that was interested in working with a community on police-community relations. That money has been funneled to the IACP through a grant, and a couple of months ago when we became aware of that funding, the availability of that funding, we approached the funder and suggested Cobb County as a site that would be a good place to work on a co-production policing model. We've been over the last month or so in contact with the existing leadership within the police department. Director Heaton, Commissioner Weatherford has been involved as well, Mr. Hankerson before he retired, and now Mr. Hosak. And IACP has secured that funding to come in and assist the police department in implementation of a co-production model. We have had an initial briefing with the command staff at the police department about that, and I'm going to be intentionally vague about what we're going to do because that part isn't really settled yet. We have discussed moving that initiative forward, and that as a fundamental organizational philosophy, now it really falls to the leadership of the police department to help construct a plan for how that moves forward. But what I can tell you is that IACP is in possession of a substantial amount of funds with which we can use to assist covering the costs of working on that implementation. So that's a whole bunch of stuff that I just threw at you, and I'll certainly stand for any questions that you have at this point.
Really great presentation. Thank you. Commissioner Weatherford.
Thank you, Doctor. It's a great job. And one of the questions I have is the staffing levels that you recommend. I think that's something we may have all known. We just didn't know how to quantify that. And so I appreciate your tables that you put together that puts it in black and white. But we are chartered with trying to manage a budget and to hire people. In your experience, in the ICP's experience, is there ways to staff above authorized levels or authorized levels that don't have a budget impact? Because we all know that it takes so long to hire someone, and that's not just with the public safety, but other departments. Or is that a financial thing that our county manager needs to work on? But if we want to hire 60 more, authorized to hire 60 more officers, but not have a budget impact of 60 more officers because we're not going to have those 60 months officers in that year time frame. Do you know any way around that?
Well, let me address that in a couple of ways. Right now, your budget is authorized for 690, and in all likelihood, there's a financial allocation for 690, but you didn't pay for 690.
Right.
You're paying for considerably less than that. And in a lot of police agencies across the country, that balance has been used to cover shortfalls in other areas, right? Whether it's in policing or other areas of public safety or other important aspects of budgeting within the geographical or community. So in all likelihood, if you were to try to staff at 760, you're not going to be paying for 760 because of the way that attrition rate works. You're going to have people that are going to be dropping off. Depending on how that rate manifests, it's difficult for me to predict, right? The number is somewhere in the middle between 690 and 760. How to fund it is a challenge, certainly. And the days of being able to solicit grants and some of that stuff to cover some of that just really aren't there. I think at some point, the department takes a look at the sum of what's going on, and the folks that are doing the budgeting have to figure out where that money is going to come from, to what extent you can cover what portion of it. We certainly recognize that the fiscal add of that number of officers is a substantial amount of money, and many organizations just not positioned to be able to do that, immediately.
But if we were to budget for 690, which what we do, and authorize to hire to 760 without budgeting for that additional, we would still only be budgeting what we authorized instead of using that as a shortfall, which is what we do. And I think that might be a path that we need to take a look at, is to actually budget for the 690 and use the 690, but go ahead and pre-hire a 60 additional so we're always staffed. So I would look forward to working with you on that. And also very excited about the co-production model, and looking forward to working with you on that and members of the community. I know we do have the Neighborhood Safety Commission that you're referring to, and I think that would be a good avenue along with some other groups in the community. But it's a great job, and I appreciate all the effort you did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cupid, have any comments?
Thank you for the time that you've spent working with Cobb County, Captain Farrell, and a number of our officers, prior manager Hankerson, and laboring over what we have here today, comprising of 259 pages of.
There's a lot of pictures in there.
And I'm sure, and there may be some more things that you left out. I appreciate Commissioner Weatherford's comments with respect to funding, because as I was listening to you provide recommendation and observation of where we are now, as far as spending so much time responding to calls, there's little time to really digest and be problem solvers. And I think that's a theme that I think is throughout the county, because we've just had this commitment to be as lean as we are, but not recognizing that it limits our ability to go beyond our calls for immediate service. So the gravity of that is reflected in your presentation. Here's my take on the presentation, and then help me if I'm viewing this incorrectly. There are about 15 different areas that were assessed, and with staffing and investigations, I think, being one of those areas. And the presentation today seemed to focus on one of those chapters more heavily than the other areas, which I think they all provided some interesting information. My thought is that there's an emphasis on staffing to bring us to a point where we can more emphasize community policing and integrate co-production. Am I?
So let me just say, as the author of that report, I think it's all important, or we wouldn't put it there, hopefully. But certainly, one of the things that emerges from this, from the entire study as a whole, is this notion of community connectedness, right? We heard even during interviews and things about wanting to be in relationship with the community, with the police department, and so forth. And the overarching theme of this is community policing. And so while there are many support pieces within the police agency, and again, not to de-emphasize any of those, one of the key factors that you have, and I think, Commissioner Cupid, you kind of mentioned this, as that time starts to, as we start to peel away that time, what that does is it takes us out of relationship with the people that we're working with in our community. And so it takes us away from that opportunity to build non-enforcement contacts, right? To build relationship type contacts where we start to develop trust and legitimacy and confidence in the community that, oh, wow, these are real people and they're right here with us and they're doing this with and for us. And so, notwithstanding the fiscal note, that, you know, we can't ignore that piece of it. But at the same time, the capacity of the officers to get to that point where they can actually dedicate that kind of time consistently has to change in order for that process to move.
Okay.
So that's, I think, if I can summarize, I think that's what I would say.
Okay. And I don't know how much follow-up we have with the IACP, if all of our dollars went towards bringing you to this moment in time, or if there's opportunity for follow-up. But, you know, with the list of priority recommendations, but yet the emphasis on staffing and co-production community policing today, it will be helpful to know where's a good place to begin, particularly given our real constraints with respect to budgeting and time. And Commissioner Weatherford alluded to this somewhat, but we also have some challenges with respect to training people fast enough to get them on board. So there's also, you know, some time delay with respect to that. You know, that if we don't get this right, does that make the co-production community police more difficult, more distant for us to attain? You know,
Well, let me just say that obviously IACP is going to be an ongoing resource. I mean, effectively, this is, you know, my position here, my presence today is kind of the end of a chapter, if you will. But there are a couple of pieces I would say. One, we certainly are an ongoing resource to our membership, as we always are, and we'll continue to do that. We are available, of course, to talk with folks from Cobb County at any level, talk about recommendations and what to do going forward. What I really think the unique opportunity, and I will tell you, this money kind of fell into our lap, was unusual. We haven't had this occur before. It really does present a unique opportunity for us to do a deeper implementation dive than what we can typically do just due to financial limitations. So we're excited about that, and I do know that I had an opportunity to meet the chief briefly this morning. We'll be having some ongoing conversations, and certainly to the extent that you want to you know, engage us on any of those recommendations, we certainly are at your disposal.
it's funny when we're talking about the new terminology of co-production. I kept trying to digest it, and I kept thinking collaborate, or coming together. And in Cobb, our first two letters are CO. So I hope that that gives us some, you know, a broader framework as to how people have perceived, you know, what we stand for with respect to policing, that this can be a coming together for us to consider policing in the context of community. Then I have one more question. I'm very glad whoever put the resources your way. I'm trying to marry co-production and community policing, because when I think of co-production from reading this is more community engagement in the development of policy or framework, which helps to bring some levels of transparency or accountability and collaboration. But then I look at just the actual act of getting out of your car and talking to people as being another element of community policing. Before we knew of the community, of the co-production term, that's what we were, a lot of us were considering community policing. Just get out and know your community. The resources that you have, does it consider those things collectively, or is it looking primarily at how you engage the public in the building and the assessment of policy?
It's a good question. So let me say first that we consider co-production to subsume and be a part of a community policing effort. So it is a larger spectrum. It's one leg of that spectrum. I've described it a little bit like community policing on steroids. It's that next piece. What I can tell you is that our funder has given us broad latitude with what to do with the money. Their direction to us was, we would like to put some money toward rebuilding community police relationships in a community, and it just so happened at the time that money became available, we were getting ready to recommend co-production here, and the stars kind of came into alignment. So I can tell you that the funder has taken the lead from us in terms of what we have said we'd like to do with the money, and they've already approved that direction. So, so that piece of it is resolved, and we've, again, a lot of this unfortunately came in the midst of Mr. Hankerson leaving and the chief retiring and so forth. So we've had to circle back and kind of reaffirm that everybody's on the same page. But I'm confident that we are, and as I said, we'll be meeting with the chief and talking about next steps in terms of where we take the project from here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Very detailed and very detailed report. And I know you did a lot of deep diving and met with a lot of folks within the department and community as well. Initially, I think there were some 34 recommendations, and the key ones that you went over today, would you say that those are maybe the top 10 of what you think we need to look at or prioritize first?
These, as I look at them, are the ones that jump off the page of the report and say these are things that really need to be looked at. They're not the only ones, obviously. There are others, but for purposes of this briefing today, they felt the most germane.
Okay. I think, overall, very positive. I know with any organization, no matter how great you are, there's always room for improvement. And I think you've given us a good base to look at, and with the recommendations and staff and all that we have, and I look forward to moving ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just have one question. On table 26, organizational climate, there were a number of factors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them that you evaluated. Were these, did you list these factors as, were they part of a larger family, or these were the 7 factors in organizational climate that you evaluated?
Are you talking about the one page that has the where we are, where we should be?
Yeah, conformity, responsibility standards.
Yeah, so that survey comes from some other work that another person did, and effectively it's a range survey. So those are fixed, those 7 things are fixed.
Okay.
What you see there are the actual aggregate responses from the people that filled out those numbers.
All right. And my concern is that we were below every one of the desired weights that we should be at. And my question is, I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm going to, because we paid for you. It reflects some dissatisfaction by the troops. Is that because they're overworked and undercompensated, or is there another factors in there?
Well, I haven't encountered a police officer yet who thought they were overpaid. So we'll just start with that. No, in all seriousness, many times these are a reflection of just whether people feel valued. And quite frankly, for those of us that have been around a little bit longer, there are some folks in the younger generation that take a little different approach to that in terms of recognition and feedback and so forth. So I can't tell you whether that's skewing the numbers, but what I can tell you is this, that what those 7 factors provide is a snapshot of people's impressions. And the good news is a lot of those are easy, they're easy targets. There are things that leadership can look at and say, gee, we could do a better job with our recognition side, or we could do a better job with empowering people. And you can come back, and I can tell you I've done this with this particular survey in my own agencies. You can go back and you can reassess that and see whether you've moved the needle. So it's kind of a nice process to use. But I would hesitate to characterize that and tie it to any particular theme, because we really didn't specifically address that. But I do think in the other survey, there were some questions about compensation, and I think that was one of the lower rating areas, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, well, the reason I'm asking is that obviously we have a ways to go here, because This is the backbone of our force. And this is actually a reflection on the leadership of that force, that they feel this way about them. And I think we need to deal with the reality and truth. If we have to do better things, I appreciate, as I call them, the police, these police officers letting us how they really feel about that. I did read the report, so I'm not just picking this one chart. But I do know that having been in a organization that dealt with the kind of challenges police officers do in a different way, that compensation is not the reason you stay. You stay because of the environment that you feel valued, and you feel like you're doing something you feel like is worthwhile doing, and that you're making a difference in this world. So I was just really concerned about this chart that reflects men and women that I've experienced in my ride-alongs I cannot say enough good things about. That if they really feel like we're not doing a good enough job of being leaders, we need to address that. And I think that we need to be upfront about that and acknowledge that we can do a better job. And if you stand by these numbers, and that's something that we need to be looking at, Rob and Mr. Heaton.
Chairman, if I could just interject.
Sure.
You know, certainly we should always be attuned to our leadership, what we're doing and how we're interacting with those things. I would be remiss if I didn't say, don't read too much into those numbers. These are what people would like to see, right? In some cases, it's maybe a Pollyannish type of a perspective,
Sure.
but it does, again, it does provide some measure of understanding of where people's thoughts are. And for that reason, we certainly suggest looking at those things and categorically, you know, determining what steps can be taken to improve that. But I did not take it. I guess I did not take it as an indictment in that regard or a significant morale concern.
Well, I would certainly stand behind the leadership. I know they're good men and women. I have that they're really outstanding. We have a culture here of growing some really fine leaders, not just in the police department and fire department, but in other departments here too. But it doesn't mean that we can't do a better job. And I think that when sometimes you get complacent. I think you pointed out a good point that the reality is that today's young men and women see the world differently, and I have a hard time adjusting to that. but I have to. And I think we have to too as leaders. So I just wanted to have your comments on that. But they made some good points about that. And this should absolutely not be considered as an indictment. I cannot say, like I said, there are not enough of the right kind of words to speak about the leadership and the young men and women that patrol our streets here and do a job that is probably the most difficult in today's society because they're always being watched and have an enormous amount of responsibility they have to carry on their shoulders. So I thank you for your report. I really appreciate the depth that you went into it. I sat down one Sunday afternoon thinking I could go over it for a couple hours, and about midnight I realized my mistake. But I really appreciate the quality of the effort that you and your team put into this. And I know that we'll take this and this will make us, make a really, great police department even better. So thank you for your time and appreciate that.
I just want to reiterate again, we very much enjoyed the effort here. Our contacts with the police department were top notch. And again, we think you have a great department as well. And we certainly stand at the ready to assist you with any of your needs going forward. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make a comment before the command stand leaves. I see some of them leaving the room. And I apologize, Chairman. I didn't think of this because I was so focused on the presentation. I've learned a lot more about public safety from reading this report than I have, ever known about the organization, about how much they do and how much they do with the number of people that they have. So just having an evaluation and a description of what they do was very enlightening. And, I appreciate all of the work that they do, even though nobody likes the light shown on us to show us, nobody likes that. But it also reflects that we are all trying to do the best we can with what we have. And sometimes it does take something to shake things up, whether it be change, whether it be an unfortunate circumstance, to provide a shift that wouldn't occur naturally to find out how we can do things better. But I just want to share from reading everything that I've seen that I appreciate all that everyone is doing, and I think that we have an opportunity to turn this ship a little bit, not a little bit, maybe even a lot, so that we can ensure that the department, as good as all the work that they're doing, is reflected in the community as a whole.
Absolutely. Great comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to come back up, Sam?
Yes, sir, if you don't mind. I'd like, first of all, Mitch, thank you, sir, appreciate it. He spent a lot of time, and I will also commend Captain Farrell. They were together so much, I was a little concerned at one point. But I will say that, this is a very thorough report, and it did come kind of at a transitional time as we were getting ready to have our new chief put into place. Chief Register has already read the report. He's already met with his staff. I know he's got a meeting in the morning at 9 o'clock with staff, and they're talking about these prioritizing these recommendations. As you know, the recommendations that came were prioritized. At the same time, we'll take what was given today, and what we'd like to do, with your permission, is let him work that with his team for the next 30 days or so, and then maybe we can come to you with a report if that fits, Chief. I know he had talked with his staff about doing a 30-day, what we can do in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and 6 months and a year. And I would like for him then to be able to come back and present to you this is what we think. And I know meeting with Dr. Williams yesterday too, reaching out to the community as well as keeping you guys informed of what we're doing. But with your permission, that's what we'd like to do, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot. Okay. We still have a couple of items left here to finish this morning before the sun goes down.
Yeah, that's where I got my nabs.
All right, so now we're going to tab number 10, right?
Correct.
So who's going to carry that, you, Bill, or Dr. Gullidge?
He's the smart one.
Okay, we'll put the smart one up there then.
All right, I'm going to try not to mess this up then. Okay. This item today is a follow-up to the work session discussion that we had yesterday. As you remember, we presented the 17 critical needs by department. During that discussion, we were asked to bring back an agenda item as a follow-up to authorize the creation of a full-time medical examiner and forensic investigator in the medical examiner's office. So this agenda item is asking for the board's approval and authorization to create and fund those positions that I just mentioned.
Commissioner Weatherford?
Thank you. This is a result of yesterday's work session, and this is one of the critical needs that rose. And as a liaison with the medical examiner, although I do not want to know what he does or see what he does, I'm supporting you any way I can. I just want you to know that. I don't want that tour.
From a distance.
From a distance, right.
That's just fine.
But I'd like to make a motion, sir, if that was all right with you.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion the Board of Commissioners authorize the creation of a full-time medical examiner and a forensic investigator within the medical examiner's office. Authorize a general fund balance appropriation amount not to exceed $35,240.55, and authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and further authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
As revised.
As revised.
Here, a second?
Second, and my question.
And we have comments?
I know this has been explained, but not everyone was here before. This full-time, will they stay after your cohort, Dr., what's her name?
Dr. Boggs. Dr. Boggs will be out on FMLA leave.
She'll be out on maternity leave.
Boy, I hope so.
Okay.
Yes, I would very much like
So
them
this is
to
a
be here for.
continuation for the 18 budget?
It is.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify,
It
because
is,
I'm
absolutely.
definitely support it. You need it, but
We
I
need
just want to clarify.
Okay, the answer is yes.
And just to answer Commissioner Burrell's questions, we also are in dire need of a third. And there's also, Dr. Gullidge and I and Public Safety have been working on ways to augment that with some outside revenue with other counties. So we think we can help fund some of that expenditures with that third person.
Okay, so Commissioner Cupid, yes.
Yes, I had to leave early yesterday and didn't catch your presentation, although before I left, I did share with the chairman what I saw were priorities based on the presentation and my review of the items, and it did include support for ME. With what was being shared, I'm curious to know, are we able to backfill that position while Ms. Boggs is out on maternity leave?
I'm not sure if we can backfill an FMLA position, but even still, there's a national shortage of forensic pathologists, greater than 50 to 60 current open positions across the country. There's more retiring than there are being created. We're a profession that requires a very specific kind of individual to pursue. Let's put it that way. That's a nice way of saying it. But it is the type of job that there's only so many people who are willing to do. As a result, there is no real market for somebody to take a job for only a few months. The people who are willing to do that, they can get full-time jobs. So we would be looking to add a third person, and just that would cover the period of time while Dr. Boggs is away, and when she comes back, then we'll be at full staff.
And forgive me, I wasn't involved in a lot of the detail of how we made it work, but when we were going through a transition with the ME department, I thought we had some reliance on the GBI at that point. Or some
We contracted with some individuals who came and assisted us. That was essentially completely reliant both on the GBI's good graces and the willingness of those pathologists to come work a second job. In my talks with many of them, they're just not willing to do it. It's just a lot of added stress and aggravation on their life, and they don't want to do it.
Okay, I appreciate you sharing that. There was some conversation, Bill, about adding positions in with one-time monies versus looking at a recurring funding source to match that position. So what has been the department or finance's take on this additional?
And because this is a critical need, and as we discussed a little bit yesterday regarding usually the appropriation of fund balances for one-time monies, this was a critical need that we felt that we needed to address sooner than later. And then as Dr. as Dr. Gullett said, and Commissioner Weatherford, we are looking for revenue sources that will help offset this. So we hope to lessen the impact in 18 and 19 as we move forward.
Okay. Without that, is there a corresponding millage that's associated with this?
I mean, when you're going to be down and around the $300,000+, it's going to be pretty insignificant as
Less
far
than
as
0.1.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not going to equate to a 0.01 mil increase at that point.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you've been on 5 seasons of CSI, does that qualify you for a backfill for this?
Expert answer that.
I've never actually watched CSI because it's work. I don't watch work on TV.
I'm trying to help you here, Doc.
I
So
appreciate
you're
it.
saying there's an element of reality associated with those shows that is actually.
We'll say they're entertaining.
I may have to
more
revise.
than educational.
Chuck Norris.
I'm gonna revise my motion.
I've watched more Chuck Norris than CSI. I'll say that.
There's no bears in his office. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any more discussion? Call the question. Passes 4-0 with Commissioner Rott excused absence. I do want this, yes. Okay, we're gonna go to we're in tab number 11. We have any more speakers, Ms. Dance? No? Okay. I'll go to tab number 12. And what I'd like to do here for each of these new appointments is I'm going to make a motion to I'm going to read the motion, read the name, and make the motion to approve. And I'd be asking for a second, okay? So on item number 1, get this correct here, is to approve the appointment of Wanda J. Cunningham to the Housing Authority of Cobb County.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Call the question. Yep. Ms. Cupid, you're
Oh, did I press the
Did
wrong
make it.
thing? I'm sorry.
There you go. All right, passes 4-0. The Commissioner excused absence. Item number 2 is to approve the appointment of Jamala McFadden to the Development Authority of Cobb County. She'll be filling in a vacancy in position number 5.
Second.
Commissioner Cooper, would you like to make that motion? I made the motion, like to second it?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Call the question, and it passes 4-0 with Commissioner Rock excused absence. And the final one is to approve the reappointment of Marvin Shams to the Housing Authority of Cobb County. I make a motion to approve the reappointment of Marvin Shams to the Housing Authority of Cobb County.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Call the question, and it passes 4-0 with Commissioner Rod excused absence. Well, thank you very much for that. And with that, I think we go on to Commissioner comments, right? All right, so I'll start with Commissioner Burrow this morning, this afternoon.
You better time me.
Start with me so I can leave.
Okay. I'd first like to say thank you for all those who supported the Northeast Cobb Business Association 5K9 race on Saturday. It was a great turnout, and NCBA is well on its way to purchasing a new service dog for an autistic student. Also, thank you to Okinawa Slim for his visit to the East Cobb Senior Center last Thursday to demonstrate his trick shots and pool playing skills, and to urge men to keep an eye on their health. He's a former Marine.
Was it a pool table?
There were 4 or 5 pool tables, and nobody complained about the condition of them. Okay, he's a former Marine.
He's a Marine.
Okay, well, he's not active duty. With 20 years of service and is a billiards expert. And he's going to be going into the Hall of Fame this year. Also, I was honored to attend the ribbon cutting and open the Georgia Celebrate Quilt Show last Thursday as well. Thanks to Robin Meyer and Judy for the tour of the show and for inviting me to cut the ribbon to show such talented artists. Each quilt is truly a work of art. Congratulations to our new police chief, Mike Register. Look forward to working with you. And a great big thank you to Tim Cox, who has been our interim chief for the last few months. He's done an outstanding job. And now he gets to go back to being still a chief, but deputy chief, and keeping us safe. Thank you, Chief Cox. I think since Commissioner Weatherford probably is going to recognize the Target Award.
No, I'm going to do that.
You're going to do something else? Okay. Precinct 1 received the Target and Blue Award from the Target stores for their ongoing cooperation with Target loss prevention to investigate and apprehend those committing crimes and deter future criminal activity in the Kennesaw Target. Great job, Precinct 1. We appreciate all you do. And also on the community development side, Kelly Duncan received the Community Development 2017 Inspector of the Year of the Building Official Association of Georgia Award. He has numerous certifications, and his advice is to never stop learning. Congratulations, Kelly. We're fortunate to have you as a member of the Cobb County Community Development Team. Also, early voting is underway at the East Cobb Government Center and West Cobb Government Center for Congressional District 6 residents. You can vote this week through Friday at 5 o'clock, and there is no voting on Monday, and then Election Day is Tuesday the 20th, and the polls will be open, precincts will be open. This Saturday at the animal shelter, Arts, Barks, and Purrs will be hosting their 4th annual festival from 10 to 4 at the Cobb County Animal Shelter. The event will feature animal-related arts and crafts along with special adoption rates. It is free. Bring an unopened, expired pet food item to receive a free gift. For more information, you can visit them on Facebook, facebook.com CobbAC. And then on June 24th at Jim Miller Park, Keep Cobb Beautiful will be hosting a hazardous waste event. You can drop off batteries, lawn care products, paint, and more. It's from 9 to noon, and you can visit keepcobbbeautiful.org for more information and what is accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrow. Commissioner Weatherford.
Thank you, sir. The first one I have today is an information, I need a peanut.
Push the right button.
Okay, I got the right button. Okay. I would like to thank Cobb County Emergency Services and Fire Department for something that they did here recently. On May 21st, Engine 2 and Rescue 30 received a call with a male with severe chest pains. They quickly responded within 5 minutes and were able to get the person stabilized and transported to Kennestone Hospital. That gentleman was Mr. Ralph Walker, and he mentioned that as soon as he got out of the hospital, he wanted to go thank everyone that rescued him. So on May 30th, he visited Station 2 and Station 30 to personally thank them for saving his life. Just another example of what public safety and our police and fire do every day for our citizens of Cobb County. So congratulations, Engine 2 and Rescue 30. I'd like to also recommend Parks Division Director Terrence Ramsey for being honored with the Justice Robert Benham Community Service Award. Is that yours? Oh. Through his community service and mentoring program, Terrence has taken a unique perspective of focusing on personal development of both his mentee and mentors, and we thank him for his investment in the youth in our community. Congratulations, Terrence Ramsey, for that award. Add my congratulations to Chief Register and look forward to working with him in the future. And thank the Cobb County Precinct 1 and also Parks for my meet and greet I had last Tuesday. Came out to support us at the Farmers Market at Lost Mountain. I'm sorry, Precinct 5. Thank you. I'm not doing so well today.
No, you're off your game.
I'm still. You had me at former Marine and pool tables. Like it got me lost there. And I'd like to congratulate again the Pope High School baseball team, but I would like to also recognize that Harrison High School women's soccer team won the state championship, and we'll have them at a future commission meeting to recognize them. As well, Allatoona High School had several state champions in the track and field meet that was just completed. So thank you, and I'm so happy to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Weatherford. Commissioner Cupid.
Thank you, Chairman. There is a lot going on, so I'm not surprised if more than one of us are off our game right now. But want to recognize a few things going on in the district. This evening, there's going to be a public meeting with respect to the study of the Sweetwater Basin that's going to be held at the Cobb Water System Facility, and that's going to be from 6 to 7:30 p.m. We all hope there's never a repeat of what occurred in 2009, and our staff is working diligently to ensure that we are properly addressing any vulnerability in that basin and surrounding area. Some other upcoming events going on. This Friday is the start of Juneteenth for the NAACP, and I have neglected to put this in my newsletter, and I don't see Deanne Bonner here to scold me for that. But they have events that are starting Friday evening and going through Sunday here right in Marietta Square. Just encourage the public to get out there, get to meet other members of the community, just have some fun. And it commemorates the date unknown of when slaves were freed, back in the 1860s, but it's good to know that we are far removed from that time, and it's just an opportunity again to commemorate that in fellowship. Let's see what else I have. This upcoming Friday, we are continuing our movie series at the Maple House, and we have the Lego Batman movie. And the doors open for that around 6:30, but the movies don't start until dark, and I think dark doesn't start until around, what, 8:30? So, you may want to come out a little later unless you want to just hang out and have your kids run around and up and down that hill over there. But it's always a good time to see other families in the district. The following week, on the 21st, which I believe is a Wednesday, from 1 to 3, we're going to have a meeting of the minds of different members of the realtor community to provide some perspective on real estate within South Cobb and encourage people to attend. And that's going to be from 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. at the South Cobb Regional Library. Later that evening, DOT is hosting a meeting with DBEs, which is disadvantaged business entities, women, minorities. And that's going to be held from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at the Stratton Library in Marietta, and encourage people to attend that event for more opportunities in our transportation projects. I want to congratulate Six Flags. I had the opportunity to spend yesterday afternoon with our county manager and our chairman as they celebrate their 50th anniversary. And I don't know if it was news to them, but I learned that Six Flags Over Georgia was the premier theme park in the Southeast, that it opened even before Disneyland. And, oh, somebody said they were there? Very good. And I was just impressed to meet the number of people that worked there when the park was open and who have a level of affection that some of us can't appreciate, who just go there to get wet and get on those rides. But the training that they provide in customer service to a number of people who've gone on to become significant leaders here in Cobb and throughout Georgia and the nation is matchless. And I want to commend that organization for continuing to bring in so many different young people to give them a good foundation for service in any walk of life. Lastly, I do want to congratulate Chief Register on his appointment or hiring as our police chief. It was really remarkable in how we got to that. And, this has been, I think it has been, you laugh. Maybe a couple years ago, I remember sitting up here literally just crying with stuff that was going on. And, looking at the IACP report and just seeing how far we've come, to see how we can really proactively address public safety is very humbling. What's even more humbling, people would not realize that Commissioner Weatherford and I actually agreed on a lot of our path forward, and who would have thunk that? And sometimes we're embarrassed to say how much we agree. We've kind of like been a very slow magnet that's been, coming together, but yes. Even, he just, the Chuck Norris joke, that was on time. I appreciate that. But, it's a very nice to see how far we've come just in working together as a board. And while I know that we're all good people, I do recognize that a lot of things emanate from who's in leadership. And I want to thank you, Chairman Boyce, for your leadership on this board. We've addressed a lot of challenging issues within the county. A lot of them have not been resolved. Some of them have had some very challenging communication. But I think that you've brought in a breath of fresh air that has allowed us to come together even when we do disagree, and to be able to appreciate the times when we actually do agree. So I want to thank you again for your continued leadership on our board.
Commissioner, it's an honor to be the chairman of this board. As I go around the county, I tell people that these are all magnificent men and women that serve your county, work very hard. And my commitment to you is unlimited, to make no surprises, let you know exactly what I'm trying to do, where I'm trying to go. So thank you for the very kind words. But I could not have done, or we could not have done where we are without all of us working together. That's how a team really works. So I'm going to make this very short. I also want to congratulate Chief Register on his appointment, and I agree with Commissioner Cupid. It was a fascinating journey, where we started and how we ended up. And someday, hopefully, we can tell that story. Yeah, it was really well. It was the best expression of how everybody had a chance to express their views and change people's minds in ways that were remarkable. So someday, I hope we get to tell that story. Secondly, I will be there Saturday. Deanne Bonner put me in an arm hold, so I'll be there Saturday at the square with some members of the county. Just telling people about the county, letting them know that we serve everybody, regardless whether you're in a municipality or just an unincorporated area. But I look forward to these kind of events. I was at Mableton Day last month, and now Juneteenth this month, and then next month the 4th of July parade. Just getting out there, showing the people, I'm just one of them, and I just look forward to talking to them every day and hearing their views and trying to help them as much as we can. But I want to end on a really, really great story. Hope you can see this picture. In the lady that is in the Hawaiian outfit. Oh, there's two ladies in Hawaiian outfits there, but the obviously the one she's a little bit older than the rest of us, but certainly wiser. That is Lillian Mortimer. And Lillian came to me. She grabbed me in the church narthex about a month ago, and that's where I tell people, if you really want to get me, just grab me going into church, and see if that word has gotten out. But Lillian and her daughter grabbed me saying that Lillian wanted to get a Georgia ID card so that she could vote. The extraordinary story about Lillian Mortimer is she is 100 years old. This is a lady that was born in the year that America entered World War I. And yet her primary consideration and concern is that she wanted to vote. And we had to really move mountains here, thanks to Sheriff Neil Warren and his staff, and also the staff at Department of Driver Services, because Lillian was born at home, so she doesn't have a birth certificate. And one of the documents that we needed to come up with was the birth certificate so she could get a Georgia ID card. And so it was a fascinating journey there also. But my good news story is that Lillian Mortimer is going to vote this week, because last week she got her Georgia ID card. And this is a testimony to people in America who want to exercise one of our greatest freedoms, which is voting. And she doesn't take it for granted. So I want to piggyback on the other comments this morning. The voting booths are open today at Whitlock Avenue and Lower Roswell at the East Cobb Government Center. For those who live in Precinct 6 or District 6, get out and vote, because Miss Mortimer has voted. And I don't understand. You have no excuses. If a 100-year-old lady wants to get out there, we'll go through this effort to vote. We really don't have a reason why we can't get out there and get behind your candidate. So this is a great county, staffed in a government with great people who go the extra mile to get people to be able to exercise one of our greatest freedoms called voting. And my person of the week is Lillian Mortimer, and I look forward to seeing her in a church narthex next week too. So with that, this meeting is adjourned.